repeat myself too much from that phone call, but at the same time, I'd like to just give a very brief background of what's on the table, what we're proposing to do, and then really I just want to talk about whatever anybody wants to talk about in terms of the lawsuit. So just to begin, like I said, my name is Oliver Hall. I am founder and director of the Center for Competitive Democracy. Founded it in 2005, right out of law school. And it's a small nonprofit with the simple mission to strengthen American democracy by removing barriers to participation in the political process. And what that means in plain terms is that we focus on ballot access litigation. And to my knowledge, we're really the only organization that focuses mainly on ballot access litigation, although there are other organizations that do some ballot access litigation from time to time. So, you know, when I was in law school, I for a while there in my younger days, I was, I think, somewhat apolitical. And, you know, I came to notice that, you know, there's a reason people like me were apolitical. And it's because we have so few choices at the ballot. And often, neither of those choices or none of those choices appeal to us. And I just kind of started investigating what's going on, and probably as many people in the room know, that's not by accident. It's really a function of discriminatory ballot access laws that the major parties, the Republicans and Democrats, I should call them the two old parties, right? I never make that mistake. I got up at 4 a.m. I just got up and played. So if I nod off, just give me a little elbow in the ribs or something. No, but you know, this is not an accident. This is a system that is working the way it's intended to work, at least in the states that have these very difficult discriminatory ballot access laws. And as everyone here knows, Texas is right up there among the top worst states. So what we're proposing to do is file a constitutional challenge to that statutory scheme. When I say we, I mean me, my organization, Center for Competitive Democracy. I would be one of the lead counsel in the case. We're also partnering with the law firm Sherman & Sterling. Sherman & Sterling is a global law firm. They have offices literally all over the world, but also here in Texas, in Austin, and Houston. My liaison at the firm is Teresa Amato. She, in a former life before she joined the firm, was very experienced in ballot access litigation. She's done as much of it as anyone in the country, really. And she also wrote a book about it, Grand Illusion, The Myth of Voter Choice in a Two-Party Tyranny. So she really knows what she's talking about, and she's also was a two-time national campaign manager for a presidential campaign. So she's lived this stuff. She's something that is near and dear to her heart as it is to mine. And through her, she's also a director of my organization, CCD. So through her, we were able to convince this major law firm to take this case on as a pro bono matter, as CCD, my organization, is doing as well.
They're taking it on as a pro bono matter?
That's right. Okay. Yeah, and so that means none of the plaintiffs are going to be charged any fees for participating in this case. We're going to do the work for free. So that's usually a pretty good thing. Okay, so just to give you some background, after founding CCD in 2005, one of the first things I did was file a lawsuit against the Pennsylvania statutory scheme. Pennsylvania had this crazy system that started following the 2004 election where they were requiring minor party and independent candidates to submit nomination petitions with tens of thousands of signatures. It's based on a percentage of the previous election, just like it is here in Texas. So it would go anywhere from 25,000 to close to 80,000 signatures, depending on the prior election. But in 2004, what they started doing, the way they enforced these nomination petitions is the candidate has to submit them, and then they would allow private parties, meaning Republicans or Democrats, to file challenges. That's not so unusual, but what was really unusual, what Pennsylvania started doing, is they were allowing the challengers to collect litigation costs at the end of the challenge process if the candidate didn't win, if the candidate didn't defend enough signatures. Now, as you probably know, signatures are disqualified all the time for reasons other than the fact that the person is not qualified to sign. And that was especially true in Pennsylvania. I mean, literally, somebody named William signs his name as Bill, that's disqualified. Somebody lives on Pine Street, but they're registered on Oak Street because they moved, that was disqualified. So tens of thousands of signatures disqualified on these kinds of grounds. Candidates have no way of knowing if that's going to happen or not when they begin the process. And then at the end, they're slapped with a bill for litigation costs. It was up to $80,000 in 2 different instances. And what happened after that was nobody was willing to submit nomination petitions. So for a period of about a decade in Pennsylvania, you only had Republicans and Democrats on the ballot for statewide office. We sued to challenge this, and I want to give a little bit of a detail of the procedural history to show you how difficult and how complicated it is to win these cases. What we first did is we challenged the statutory provision that authorized courts to impose litigation costs. A lawsuit based on that, challenging that provision. That's an unconstitutional financial burden on participation in the political process. The problem was it was state court judges imposing those costs. As you may know, you really can't sue judges for doing their job. Otherwise, judges would get sued all the time. So we didn't sue the judges, we sued who you normally sue, the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State's defense was, hey, I have nothing to do with this. And our position was, well, who do we sue? We can't sue the judges. This is the defendant who has the closest relationship to this statutory scheme other than judges. And beyond that, as a matter of state law, the Secretary of State has the authority and the duty to enforce the election statutory scheme, the election code. Well, the district court judge threw us out, and then the Third Circuit affirmed. And so we had to go back to the drawing board, and that's what we did. What the court basically said is you can't sue the judges, you can't sue the secretary because he's not the one doing the thing that you're complaining about. You got to figure something else out. They didn't tell us that part, but we figured that part out. And so what we did is we decided, okay, we can't challenge this cost provision on its own. What we can do, though, is come up with a new approach wherein we challenge the signature requirement in conjunction with this process of challenging the signatures and forcing candidates to pay if they lose. And so the idea was the state cannot both require you to submit nomination petitions and require you to pay the costs of validating them, which is effectively what Pennsylvania was doing. Well, we got the same judge that we got in the previous case, and he said this case is no different from the last case, and he threw it out on standing. But he was wrong about that. We had totally changed our approach, and we had also brought in a lot more evidence, and of course the legal theory was fundamentally different. And the Third Circuit said so. It reversed him, and I know a lot of people have made themselves familiar with these opinions. I can send anybody a link to these opinions if you want to check them out, but they're also pretty easily available online. It's Constitution Party of Pennsylvania v. Ashley. The Third Circuit wrote a great opinion, and it really slammed down the district court judge and said, no, these guys have standing. Not only do they have standing, but this system is chilling their First Amendment rights to participate in the political process. They've submitted evidence. You can't just ignore the evidence and say they haven't. And so that was a really fantastic decision. And the district court judge then, on remand, started ruling in our favor after that. He got a pretty good signal from the Third Circuit that that wasn't going to be permitted. And it actually took 2 more rounds of litigation. There were 3 appeals in total. We won every one of them to the Third Circuit. And eventually what happened is the district court judge entered an order which did exactly what we asked him to do. He lowered the signature requirements, and there's now a cap, 5,000 signatures for statewide office, no more, and then less for other offices, and the provision allowing private parties to challenge candidates and then collect litigation costs cannot be enforced. So it was a major victory that really totally transformed the statutory scheme. I'm not going to try to pretend that that's what happens in every ballot access case. It doesn't. These are hard cases to win, and that took us about 9 years in total of litigation between the 2 lawsuits and the 3 appeals in the second one. Nevertheless, something like that is what we want to try here, what we're going to do in this new lawsuit. And what we're trying to do is adapt the strategy that we had in Pennsylvania for the Texas statutory scheme. So, you know, the Texas statutory scheme is difficult for a lot of reasons. There's a very high signature requirement. There's a very short time for collecting the signatures. There is an early filing deadline. And then the applications for nomination and the declarations of intent are due even before the nomination petitions, almost a year before the election. There are restrictions on who can sign nomination petitions. And then if you do get on the ballot, there's a pretty steep retention requirement for maintaining ballot access. All of these things combined make Texas one of the toughest states in the country to get and maintain ballot access. And I know that the Libertarian Party has been successful in doing that in recent elections, and that's to your credit, of course, and also to the credit of candidates like Mark Miller, who just barely squeaked by. And he deserves, and the party deserves congratulations, of course, for that. But notice, and I know everybody knows this, Mark Miller was probably hands down the most qualified candidate in that race, right? He's a PhD chemical engineer, and he had the endorsement of every major newspaper in the entire state, and he still barely got enough to retain ballot access. So, not what I said. So this is a problem, and it's not going away. Even though the Libertarian Party is on the ballot now, what about next time? What about next time? I'll just tell you that a candidate, an independent candidate, maybe some of you heard about Jonathan Jenkins. He was trying to get on the ballot this time around to challenge Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke for the Senate. He was very well organized. I think he was pretty sophisticated and pretty knowledgeable about what he was going up against, and he was very well funded. He spent about $350,000 on his nomination petition drive. But if the reports from the field are true, there was interference with the petition drive, probably from the Ted Cruz campaign, we don't know. Anyway, he came up way short, didn't come anywhere close to the, I think, 47,000 signatures he needed, so he's not on the ballot. That was $350,000. If he wanted to get what he really needed to get, he probably would have needed to spend more than $500,000. And so that's the stakes that we're looking at when we think about ballot access in the future. And you know, I, knock on wood, hope it never happens, but the Libertarian Party has to consider, you know, are we going to be in that situation in 2020 after the 2018 election? If not 2020, what about the next time? And I don't know about you, but I can think of a lot of things better to spend $500,000 on than collecting signatures. It's an archaic, obsolete way of regulating the ballot in the 21st century. In case you didn't know, I know Kathy gave a very, I think a very detailed historical analysis of ballot access here in Texas. So maybe no, but you know, these procedures were adopted over 100 years ago, 1905, and they haven't changed since. Meanwhile, the Republicans and Democrats, they get on the ballot automatically by means of taxpayer-funded primary elections, and anything they have to file, do it online. It's digitized. You know, no problem. They use modern technology. It's only the independents and the minor party candidates that are stuck using what is really 17th century technology. Go stand on the corner with pen and paper and collect signatures by hand. It's ridiculous. And so this is the kind of thing that we're going to be attacking in this lawsuit. We're trying to bring, we will be bringing a comprehensive challenge to this statutory scheme that focuses not only on the high signature requirement, the unnecessarily short time for collecting signatures, the restrictions on who can sign petitions, but also the absurdity of requiring everybody to do it in these archaic procedures that have no place in a modern electoral process. And so that, I think, is a new approach that hasn't been litigated, and it's one of the major things we've been working on in the last several months, is developing a comprehensive historical record to show that there have been candidates and parties who got on the ballot in Texas in the past, but they didn't do it without spending a lot of money, and inflation adjusted to $500,000 basically. So we're developing that evidence, and we're pretty confident that we're going to be able to go into court and say, look, if you want to get on the ballot as a Republican or a Democrat, at least if you win the nomination, you're on automatically, for free, subsidized by the taxpayers. If you want to do it any other way, if you want to challenge either of those two older parties, you better come up with a lot of money, because that's the only way to do it. And that takes us into a whole new sphere of legal precedent and argument, because now we're not talking about, oh, is the 1% signature requirement constitutional? The Supreme Court has upheld a 5% requirement. Now we're talking about the nuts and bolts of what it actually requires to get on the ballot in Texas. And we are developing the evidence to show what you're really doing here is imposing a financial barrier. And we think that's a really key point that will make this lawsuit at least a different approach than has been tried in the past. I will say, the Supreme, one of the challenges of challenging the Texas statute is that it was essentially upheld by the Supreme Court back in 1974, I want to say, American Party of Texas v. White. And one of the arguments they made back then, this was immediately following the Bullitt case that I know that Kathy mentioned, when the state first started using taxpayer money to pay for primaries. At that time, some of the plaintiffs in that case said, well, what about us? What about the cost of our petition drive? And the court rejected that claim, but said, well, we just don't have any evidence on that. We don't know that there's a real burden here. Well, we are working, and we have been working, to develop that evidence that wasn't there 40 or 50 years ago, but most certainly is there now, up to and including 2018, when a candidate can spend $350,000 and still come nowhere close to succeeding to get on the ballot. So, like I said, I probably already talked longer than I wanted to, but I wanted to just give you a sense of what we're trying to do with this lawsuit. We're bringing a constitutional challenge to say that this entire statutory scheme, in its totality, imposes an unconstitutional burden on potential challengers to the two oldest parties who happen to have enacted these statutes. It's no coincidence that they set up a system where they're on automatically by taxpayer-funded primaries, and everybody else has to go through this supposedly neutral procedural process. It's not neutral, it's not procedural. It's a financial burden, and we have the evidence to prove it. Another key part of this strategy is, as many of you know, we've been working on getting a legislative remedy in place before the legislature. So we've already done that. We drafted a comprehensive ballot access reform bill. It lowers signature requirements. I believe it caps them at 10,000 for statewide office. Establishes a filing deadline of the first business day after July 4th. Another key thing it does is it authorizes online signature gathering. They're actually already doing this in Arizona, we discovered after we started working on this. And I'm actually surprised Arizona is even doing it, but nobody else is doing it, and they need to. And we need to be trying these innovative kind of approaches to get ballot access into the 21st century instead of where it's stuck in the 17th century or 19th century, pick your century, but it's not the 21st century. So that bill was introduced in the last session, and we're going to get it reintroduced in the next session. And the idea is you bring a lawsuit, you have a legislative remedy that's right there on the shelf waiting to be adopted if and when the lawsuit succeeds. And that's kind of what happened in Pennsylvania. They had a bill, very good reform bill, that had been introduced in the legislature session after session, and of course it went nowhere. And then suddenly Pennsylvania finally loses this lawsuit, and they try to take emergency procedures to adopt this legislation before the session ended. They didn't quite get to it in time, and so what ended up happening though is the judge basically adopted the text of that reform bill and made it part of his final order in the case. And that final order is now the law of Pennsylvania, unless and until the legislature acts. I know there are some concerns about the parties' participation in the lawsuit. I've heard some of them voiced, and rather than sort of me trying to address them now, I think I'd just like to ask anybody who has questions or concerns, anything that you want to raise about this lawsuit, please go ahead and do so. I just want to say before opening the floor, I guess, to questions, is that the potential upside of winning a case like this, as you can see, is enormous. You will be reforming this statutory scheme that has been in place for, decades, and which has been suppressing your ability to participate effectively in the political process. Even a successful, and I consider the Libertarian Party certainly successful relatively compared to the other parties that are trying to organize in Texas. You guys are on the ballot, you've been maintaining ballot access, and it's no small feat. But imagine what you could do if you could be focusing your resources on your campaigns for public office rather than on getting and retaining ballot access. And that's really the goal here. What you're laboring under right now is a discriminatory system. It's an apartheid system. I know that's a loaded word. I don't use it lightly, but it is a system that says the two oldest parties are on the ballot automatically. They don't have to pay anything. Anyone who wants to challenge them, guess what? You're in for a rough ride. And that's got to change. You can't just hit this around the margins. You've got to have a comprehensive reform. That's what we're going for with this lawsuit. In terms of the risk involved, I think we can talk about that in more detail during the question period. But basically, the risk is very minimal to none, I would say. There is the possibility of attorney's fees. If we win, we're going to get awarded attorney's fees. If we lose, the other side will not get attorney's fees unless a court deems our case to have been frivolous, vexatious, or without merit of any kind. That's a very high standard, and it's almost never done. And in the cases that I've seen where it has been done, because I've researched this issue, and you have to look pretty hard, it was deserved. It's a plaintiff who is wildly suing somebody with no basis in law or fact, and refuses to let it go, and at some point they get sanctioned. But that's not what this case is going to be. This case is going to be litigated by ballot access litigation specialists, me, my board of advisors, and then supported by this global law firm, Sherman & Sterling, also who has experienced ballot access litigators on their team. So I think there's a huge upside. I don't see really any downside to speak of, but I'd certainly like to just open it up at that point, and let's talk it over. Please.
I just want some clarification here. Originally you said you don't want any money, and we found a law firm that is going to do it pro bono, right? So there's a difference between we don't want any money and we don't want any money from you. Because then you followed it up just a few seconds ago and said, if we get awarded attorney fees. So somewhere in there, somebody wants money, right? It's just not necessarily from us. So my question is this coming from the public? If we win, and I just want, when we make decisions like this, we need to make sure we understand that our ventures here are being funded by someone, even if they're not us. And so we have to be responsible for things that we put on the public. And if we say, well, this is for the common good, so it's worth it, then we have to understand there's a weight to that decision as well, because there's thoughts behind decisions that are like that. So you're saying that you are taking attorney fees, just not from us, and it is coming from the public? Is that what I'm understanding?
Not exactly. By the way, could you just identify yourself?
And Jennifer Payne.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
No, not exactly. So the case will be filed under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983. That's the Federal Civil Rights Statute. It's the statute that authorizes any citizen who feels that their constitutional rights have been violated by somebody operating essentially with the authority of the state to bring a lawsuit in federal court. Now, 42 U.S.C., it's called Section 1983 for short, has a companion statute, Section 1988. What Section 1988 says is a prevailing party in a lawsuit brought under Section 1983 is entitled to attorney's fees. And what that means is, again, as I said, and this is, I'm paraphrasing what the Supreme Court and courts below have said about this statute. What that means is, if we win the case, we will be entitled to an award of attorney's fees, and that will be paid by the defendant, by the state. And the reason, and that's an enactment by Congress, and the policy determination there is, these are hard cases to bring, and typically people who have their constitutional rights violated don't necessarily have the bank book to go out and hire a law firm to represent them. So the idea was to encourage meritorious constitutional lawsuits to be filed. And that's why if you win, you're entitled to a fee, because it's also to encourage attorneys to bring the case on a contingency basis, assuming that if you win, you'll get paid.
Right, and with all due respect, if you win a case like this, I think that you're entitled to enjoy the fruits of your labor. I'm not questioning that at all, so please understand. What I was mainly interested in is clarifying earlier, you said it's pro bono, and quote, we don't want any money, but then that's not necessarily the case because somebody somewhere is getting money. So I just want to clarify that that is the case, and that if we win, you will get paid, and it does come from the state, which is in effect the people. Yes?
Well, I guess I don't quite think that characterization is quite accurate. I mean, pro bono means you're doing it for free. We're not charging the Libertarian Party of Texas or any of the other plaintiffs. And we would get paid, yes, if we win under the statute. That's what the statute provides.
I understand. We just have a weight to make sure the decisions that we make, we understand the full ramifications of them, that's all. You know, we take it really seriously. Okay, so then the second question I had was pertaining to the indemnity clause that was originally voted on. I mean, it's not so much the indemnity that I'm concerned about, it's the fact that it was offered and signed into contract without the authority to do so. And so my question is, number one, why did you offer it and write it into the contract and sign it without the authority to do so? And what confidence do we have as you as our representative that you won't do other things out of authority that we later find out?
So I did have authority to do that, and what Ms. Payne, yes?
Yes.
What she's asking about is, originally, when we first entered a retainer agreement with the Libertarian Party of Texas, I was told that people were concerned that attorney's fees might be awarded against the party or any plaintiff. I said, look, that is not an issue, and we talked about it somewhat, and I said, you know what, if people are still concerned about this, and I know that the risk is so small as to be virtually non-existent, I'm willing to indemnify. I'm willing to have my organization take on that risk because I know that the risk is virtually zero. It's not something I did unilaterally. It's not something I did without authority. I talked it over with my advisors, and we said this is pretty unusual. We haven't encountered a situation like this, but if it will help people feel that they have the confidence they need to do the lawsuit, then it's something that I would be willing to do. Subsequently, Sherman and Sterling came on. I retained them. They are my attorneys. And they've simply advised that this is not something that really, as a matter of corporate governance, my little 501c3 nonprofit can or should be doing. I mentioned my mission statement in the beginning to improve participation in the political process by removing barriers. And my attorneys think that indemnifying clients or indemnifying potential clients is really going beyond that. I think it's a judgment call, and I think that it's actually a legitimate consistent with the mission. If that's what people need to feel confident, I would be confident to do it. On the other hand, I have to take the advice of my counsel. You know, there is the old saying about the attorney who has himself for a client. So, so I defer to that. But this is what this is what I had to explain to Mr. Wilford, and we talked about it. I just explained that that's the situation. But I think ultimately it doesn't change the analysis of the underlying issue, and that is, what is the risk here to the Libertarian Party? And the risk, I think, is still, very minimal. As to whether you can trust me or not, I guess that's a decision you have to make for yourself. All I can tell you is I've been perfectly upfront with you and with everybody in the Libertarian Party and with everyone involved in this case, as I have with every one of my clients in any case that I've ever taken. I've never been accused of any kind of dishonesty, either informally or formally. I've never been, there's never been even the slightest hint of any kind of issue like that from a court or from any client. So, like I said, it's a judgment call. I'm comfortable with that judgment call, but I'm acting on the advice of my own counsel.
With that said, the time has expired. Do we have a motion to
Motion to extend for 15 minutes.
Motion to extend for 15 minutes. There's a second. Is there any objection?
Yes.
There's objection. Is there any amendments? I see no amendments. All in favor of extending for 15 minutes, raise your hand. All opposed? The motion does carry. So let me set the timer, but please continue.
So you had authority to offer this clause, but then you were counseled against it. So after the document was signed and voted on, you went back and said, we can't honor that document, we have to create a new one. Is that what happened? I just want to be sure, because when you authorize authority to do something, regardless of what it is, okay, we have to be sure when we vote on it that things are going to stay that way. And if there's this back and forth thing, we just want to be sure as we're moving forward, who has the authority here? You're under the authority of them. They said not to do it, so you withdrew, and we had to sign a new document. Is that the way it happened?
Well, I mean, I'm not under their authority. I'm acting on their counsel. And, I don't think I have much more to say about this. The fact is, when this issue came up, I went back to the chairman and explained what my attorneys are saying. This is really not something we should be doing. And so we renegotiated the contract. It's a contract. The parties are free to renegotiate a contract at any time. That's what we did.
Do you want to?
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Oliver, first of all, thank you for coming all the way down here. I appreciate it. Might have the state incorrect because it's been a couple of weeks since I saw this article, but I feel like this just successfully happened in South Dakota. Are you familiar with that? I get the state wrong, maybe?
I don't know. We've had a string of wins. When I say we, I mean not me personally, but ballot access. It's been a good run, yeah.
Okay. So nothing we're doing here is, this is being done all over the country successfully.
That's right. I mean, the one that really strikes me is Georgia, where it was one of the worst states, maybe right behind Texas, and the Green Party headed up a lawsuit there and got the signature requirement struck down. And when that happens, the court has a lot of discretion just to enter an order that will set a reasonable ballot access requirement. So Georgia was one of those states that had 50,000, 60,000, whatever signatures, and it's now 7,500. So yeah, I mean, there are good things happening.
Just one little follow-up thing, because you were talking about Pennsylvania earlier, and this body may not be aware, but in this last election that just happened in the spring, I think we now have like 163 total libertarians elected nationwide. I think 60-something of those come from Pennsylvania alone.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So they've had tremendous success ever since then.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I got a two-part question. We've already had a vote to say to proceed on with this lawsuit, and we did it in an interim where we didn't have a face-to-face meeting. And I got the impression from when we were doing it that there was an urgency to do so because we needed to get going, like in the end of May or June or sometime. I presumed, and I don't know if it was fact or not, but I presumed that the lawsuit was going to include trying to get the Green Party or whoever else onto the ballot in 2018. There was going to be some injunctive stuff going on, and that was the reason for the urgency. And I wanted to find out, number one, what you're thinking about the timing of the lawsuit. Were we thinking about trying to do that? Have the facts changed? For instance, I know the Green Party came up with abysmal facts because they only turned in like 500 signatures, which doesn't help a lawsuit. And I wanted to find out just what your thinking about timing was in general.
Yeah, thank you for the question. What I'm thinking about the timing is I want to file this lawsuit, and we're very close. But no, the intention was never to try to get injunctive relief in time for 2018, and we were explicit about that with the parties that are not already on the ballot. And the reason is, as you may know, I mean, it's hard enough to win a ballot access lawsuit without rushing into court with an election impending and saying, you know, hurry up and put all of us on the ballot. Judges are very reluctant to do that. It makes them nervous. Contrary to what we often hear about judicial activism, at least in this context, I find judges are pretty reluctant to interfere with upcoming elections. They're much more comfortable striking down a law as unconstitutional when in effect it doesn't really matter. At least it doesn't matter for any immediately impending election. So we were always very clear that this lawsuit is about getting long-term comprehensive relief. That's the way it's being structured, and we're not really interested in rushing into court with a motion for preliminary injunction. So that was not the intention. In terms of getting the lawsuit filed, we're pretty close. Like I said in my opening remarks, a big part of what we've been doing is going back into the historical record and trying to find primary evidence for every candidate and party that ever got on the ballot in Texas and how they did it, to demonstrate the burden, because that was the key thing that was missing in American Party of Texas v. White. So we're developing evidence. There's been a couple that are lingering that, you know, there are people that are still around that are involved, but we can't quite get an answer from them yet. So we're close and we're working on that kind of thing. But we'll be filing, you know, as soon as humanly possible, as soon as we have that kind of stuff sorted out. Yes, sir.
Rene Perez. If I understand what you're saying, is you don't require any precedent from any other circuit or any other state to be successful in this case. Is that accurate?
Yes, I mean, as in any area of the law, what the Supreme Court says about it is final. And so we're mainly relying on Supreme Court precedent, and then the lower courts rely on Supreme Court precedent, and we'll be relying on the lower courts as they construe Supreme Court precedent. But so, you know, like, are we going to try to say, hey, the Third Circuit said this, you guys should do it too? I mean, if it helps, right? But what you mainly want to do is rely on the Supreme Court decisions and the lower court decisions as they are informed by the Supreme Court decision. So Fifth Circuit. Yes, sir.
So, quick question. Are you familiar with the language of the legislation that is supposedly going to be coming before the Texas legislature in regards to ballot access? Is that something you guys had a hand in developing?
Oh yeah, I wrote it.
So then is this lawsuit basically the stick to that legislation's carrot?
That would be accurate.
Okay. So if you're saying that you're in a strategic position where you want to move as fast as possible, or are you basically saying that you feel like it's important to go ahead and put the lawsuit on them to provide the impetus to approve the legislation? Yeah. I mean, that's part of it. And then also, I've been working on it for a long time, and I know everybody. I mean, nobody's more anxious than I am, but yeah, let's get it filed. And, you know, there's just a lot of work to be done all around the country, and I want this Texas lawsuit to be, I hope, a template for doing good things elsewhere. But, you know, I'm just anxious to get it done. I think everybody is. The kind of the specific point I was trying to get at is, I don't understand lobbying very much. I'm not really into that. So I didn't know whether if you lay the lawsuit on them, if that's going to help them see the light, or if it's going to make them mad and dig in their heels. Yeah. So that's kind of what I was asking in regards to what the strategy was.
Yeah, interesting question. Honestly, I think they won't care much about it either way until it really matters, meaning until we win. You know, I don't think they pay attention to us until we win.
What do you think the odds are of us getting the legislation passed?
Pretty low.
So
but,
why?
but you know what? The thing is, you just do these things. You
Right,
get
it's
this
part of
stuff
the
out there. It's like you got to fire on all cylinders because you never know where you're going to get your break.
Right.
Maybe we will get a break in the legislature. I mean, nobody would have thought Donald Trump was going to get elected, right? And that surprised everybody. I mean, anything's possible. But the point is to put ourselves in the position to succeed at any one of these levels in any front in the battle. And if we get the litigation break and then the lawsuit and then the legislation is there teed up, and you know, I mean, you never know how it's going to happen. I think the point is just to put it all out there and push as hard as we can in all directions. Sorry, yes.
Can I have you repeat the law that you're going to be using yeah.
Yes, it's 42 USC section 1983. And that's just the standard statute that authorizes any lawsuit to challenge the constitutionality of any state action, legislation, or, you know, an arrest or whatever. So I saw a hand back somewhere.
If there's no more questions, we can just switch that out.
Yeah, just you know, I don't know if you can talk about it regarding the constitutionality, because, you know, reviewing both Texas and the U.S. Constitution, I don't see where elections are really covered other than a republic form of government. So, you know, depending on where you want to go with Article 4, Section 4, or Article 1, Section 2, Texas Constitution, I don't know if that's what you're going to be pointing to, but I don't know if you can talk about it.
Sure, of course. No, we'll be relying on the First Amendment and the 14th Amendment. And that's essentially what all of these lawsuits invoke. There are sometimes other provisions that people rely on, but basically what you're saying is this is an infringement on our rights of speech, association, and voting rights, all of which are kind of related and tied up and emanate from the First Amendment. And then coming out of the 14th Amendment is the equal protection aspect. Yes.
Mr. Hall, first of all, I'm Timothy Martinez. Just wanted to thank you for taking the time again to come out of your way just to address this body's concerns. It means a lot, it speaks a lot to your character, to your passion for the Libertarian Party. I know many in this body maybe weren't paying attention all the way through. I know that on the call that you had, the WebEx call, I was disappointed in the turnout. I'm glad that a lot more of the body is here. Did you mention right now that you also have that you're involved with the Libertarian Party National, that you're legal counsel? I don't know if you mentioned that and talked about that, but can you talk about your passion for the Libertarian Party in general? Just for this body, I just don't think they've been engaged to that point where they understand who you really are and why you're fighting so hard for liberty. So I just want to thank you for flying down again. Thank you for addressing this body.
Okay, well, thank you for the question. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so from the beginning of my work in this issue, in this area, in 2005, I was working with various state libertarian parties, mainly in Pennsylvania, but elsewhere as well. Look, I have to, okay, I should have said before, let's try to keep this confidential, right? We're talking about ongoing litigation, and I hope that we can keep this confidential. But one thing okay.
There's a camera behind me.
We've been on YouTube for a while now.
You know, in my business, we like to keep things confidential until we make them public. But I understand. I just, look, I don't want to disparage anybody, and that's why I say I want to keep this confidential. But I've always appreciated about the Libertarian Party the organization, the dedication, the professionalism of this party. That's true for national, it's true for all the state parties that I've been involved with. And the, you know, ultimately the dedication to principle. You hear that from others that we work with, but I think it's very pronounced in the Libertarian Party. And I think that this party is really poised to offer a new perspective in our politics, nationally and locally, that is really well developed in a way that maybe some of the other newer parties are not. And I think it would be immensely valuable to have that voice heard, not only in the individual campaign
and debate and that sort of thing, but just as a matter of public discourse. We're so confined now by what these two parties are willing to say to one another, and we know that very often they speak in platitudes and meaningless terms, and you don't get that from libertarian candidates, and I really love that and respect it. And that's one thing that I do for the national party is whenever their candidates are excluded from debates, it's amazing. There are these networks, TV networks, and various organizations, universities all across the country. They're always staging these debates, and they're just like, Republican, Democrat, you're in. Everybody else, sorry, we're not interested. And so the Libertarian Party is the only party that is on top of this situation, saying, no, we deserve a place at the table. And not only that, but here's a demand letter demonstrating that this debate is going to violate the law if you don't include our candidates. And that's one thing that's actually been really great about working for the national party is that we've had a lot of success with that. There's one thing that's nice about going to law school, and you fire off an angry letter, and sometimes people actually listen and change their behavior. We've gotten a lot of libertarian candidates in debates, and I think it's a great thing. So, I've really enjoyed. I've been counsel of the Libertarian National Committee for about 2 years now. It's been a fantastic experience. Thank you. Yes.
I'm Amy Lyons. I'm just curious, what are the odds of the people hearing this case asking about current candidates and what we've had to go through to be on the ballot? Because as far as current candidates, we might not have had the struggles that say they had several years ago when they were trying to regain ballot access. So I'm just curious if they'll try to use that against us, or.
I don't see that as that specifically. I don't see that being much of an issue because you're on the ballot and people understand when you're on the ballot you don't have to struggle to get on the ballot. I think though you're raising a larger point about what's the Libertarian Party's stake in this lawsuit if we're already on the ballot, right? And I think the answer to that is one, you have this looming problem of what if we don't reach the retention threshold. So that's a looming problem that's out there, and that problem, that necessity to make your decisions based on the need to maintain ballot access is one of the things that courts recognize is sufficient to give you legal standing, because the mere existence of the statute requires that the party make decisions in a way or different decisions than it otherwise would. And so that's the key point with standing. Standing, you don't have to have a severe injury, you just have to have a concrete and specific injury that is not the same as everybody else in the general public. And so we've looked into this issue, and we're satisfied that the Libertarian Party has standing to bring this case.
Thank you. Is this a motion to extend?
Yes.
How long?
10 minutes?
Motion to extend for 10 minutes. Is there a second? I hear no second. All right. Well, with that said, thank you very much, Oliver. All right. Next up, we're going to have a motion come back up. I'm actually going to take a little bit of privilege, and I'm going to tell you before I do that I am going to be stepping out of line. I'm going to ask everybody on this body to trust me. I think I've been fair throughout my terms, and that I'm going to be fair with what I'm about to say. So I'm asking for a little bit of trust. I've been approached by people and heard rumor of people that hadn't approached me, asking me about strategy on how to dispose of this. And I'm going to give both sides their optimum strategy right now. I've been asked about postponing indefinitely, about different ways to dispense this. There's no way to dispense with this that doesn't require at least a majority vote. That is the facts. The other thing is, if we dispense with it in a way that we don't take a vote on it, whoever prevails in that leaves a big opening for the other side to say, well, we didn't say yes, or we didn't say no. The best way to dispense with this is to vote it up or vote it down and send a clear message to the other side of what this body wants to do. That said, there was a motion by Tom Glass to withdraw from being a plaintiff. The wording's on the screen. And then there was a subsequent motion to postpone until now. So we will now come into session with the motion on the floor. I think it happened last time, but I'm going to go ahead and give Tom a chance to speak to his motion, and then we can proceed with other debate.
Okay, I asked to speak because my name was.
Yes, absolutely.
It's pretty clear to me that the body has already decided that we should do this, and I don't, quite frankly, unless somebody who voted for it has changed their mind and there's enough people that wanted to bring it up to do it, I don't think we should waste our time on
Hear, hear.
It is a motion of the body, and anybody that wants to can bring it up. But here's what I will say: if not, if nobody's going to bring it up, what I'd like to spend is just a few short minutes talking about expectations about how we will manage this lawsuit. My thought is, at the very least, I would like to get some sort of monthly written report from our from CCD and sent to the chair, and the chair puts it up on the forum. And then I guess as needed, if we see issues coming out of those reports that we want to discuss in future SLEC meetings, we'll do so. I don't know that requires a motion, but that's what my request to the chair, and I don't know what the CCD would have to say.
Point of information.
Yeah.
Point of information, yes.
Is Tom amending his motion that he moved?
I'm not.
I don't think
doing a single thing. I'm not making a motion. I'm just talking.
It says move, so that's.
So if I may, let me say how I think this should proceed. First of all, I want to address you. I have absolutely no problem, and I'm going to ask with the without objection from the body, Mr. Hall, do you think those monthly reports are going to be a problem for you or your organization?
And not only are they not a problem, but it's in line with what we intend to do anyway. So thanks for the suggestion. We'd be happy to do it.
All right. So with that said, it sounds like there's no problem there. We do have a motion on the floor. My recommendation, yes.
And maybe Mr. Hall can answer this question. We're seeing the end of straight ticket ballot voting, right? This term, next term. Does that change anything with the strategy or the lawsuit? This is a big change in Texas. Does this have any impact at all with proving we have a burden, or does that make a difference at any bit?
I'll go ahead and entertain this because I think it may weigh on something. Does that change anything for you, Mr. Hall?
You know, I think that what it most clearly relates to is ballot retention. Because it's, I think, been a burden on ballot retention. But in terms of the overall merits of the claims, I don't think that it detracts from them. And as I've been saying, this is really a comprehensive challenge, so it's not like that's the only issue that we're going to be addressing. We're addressing, you know, virtually every aspect of the statutory scheme that imposes a burden. But I think it's an improvement that it's no longer in place.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Since we've just done a discussion mode now, the people that saw the presentation before during the lunch break, we spent a lot of time establishing that.
Before you do that, I will come right back to you.
Okay.
You mind if I do so? Okay, so we do actually have a motion on the floor. My recommendation is, unless there's debate to this motion, that without debate, we go ahead and take a vote. I think if we read the room, we can tell how that's going to go, and then we'll go into general discussion. How's that sound?
Point of information.
Yes.
What are we doing? Is this a motion to move it off the table, or a motion to not bring it off the table?
It is this motion as written to withdraw from the plaintiff's lawsuit, and we can just vote nay on it.
But didn't take a motion to get it off out of the postponed?
No.
Comes along because of session.
Yeah, because it was postponed to this time.
Yeah.
So it's automatically back up.
Point of information.
Yes.
Could Tom withdraw the motion, or should we go ahead and vote on it?
It would be better.
Was it seconded? Was that motion ever seconded?
Yeah, it was seconded. It was on the floor. It was debated at the time. It would probably be better if we just voted. So with that said, yes.
I'd like to make a call the question.
I don't think that's necessary, but I will recognize that if it becomes so. With that said, all in favor of this motion, raise your hand.
All right, and wait a second, I gotta make sure. Is the motion to withdraw?
The motion is to withdraw. All in favor of withdrawing, raise your hand. All opposed to withdrawing, raise your hand. The motion fails. We can now go into discussion. just talk, please.
We spent a lot of time talking about our position of the party, that 2% of the governor's race gets you automatic ballot status for 4 years. And I asked this on the call to Oliver, would that in any way interfere with his intended lawsuit? Would that interfere with us? And he said, no, we can work with that, that's fine. So I just wanted to give you a chance to say that you understand that is our position, and that nothing would happen in this lawsuit would undermine that.
So thank you for raising the point, and we've definitely made a note of that, and thank you also for sending me the letters from the Secretary of State addressing this issue. So there are 2 letters, right? One in which the Secretary of State some years ago said 2% for governor is sufficient, and then more recently the Secretary is a different Secretary has sent a letter. Oh, okay, right, sorry.
That's all I
So anyway, there's at least some reasonable debate about what is the true meaning of the statute, whether you need 2% for governor and 5% for every other race, or is it 5% for all offices? And the way we're structuring this lawsuit is we're just going to assume that it's 2% for governor and leave it at that. And nothing we're going to argue or say in the lawsuit is going to call that into question.
Mr. Farmer.
I might be a little confused here, but I'm gonna call for orders of the day right now.
So, yeah, so we are right now still in the motion. I am, and I will entertain any challenge to this. I'm calling it in order to the motion to discuss the motion, and I'm playing with the line here, I'm not gonna lie. But if there's no other questions, we can dispense with this and go into the next item. Yes.
I thought that the motion we were just dealing with was to withdraw from the lawsuit. What motion are we in right now then?
There's not a motion on the floor right now.
But you just said motion.
No, the motion fell.
So we're still in discussion of the motion that just
Yeah,
failed?
yeah.
No, we're discussion about the lawsuit.
Yeah, we're in discussion about the lawsuit in case there are any other motions about the lawsuit.
Well, how much more time do we have on this?
5 minutes and 45 seconds. But if there's no other questions, we can move on.
Yes.
I see no other questions. All right. Well, with that said, I have kind of a weird angle. Presentation on existing org structure, but we moved Stephen's branding discussion. So, Stephen, I think you have 15 minutes.
And I do have a motion.
Yes, I will get that pulled up while you're going.
And I request to pull up the examples from the forum.
Yes, and I can get that moving as well.
It has been the tradition of Open Texas to have our own brand, our own logos, and I completely understand that. The National Party would like some unification across the state so that in the media, we look unified. And I think that's a reasonable request, so I, on the forum, asked for some creative graphic artists to come up with some examples using the national branding standards, and there were some great examples presented. So I just created the motion for this body to consider changing our branding to the national standards. We can add our own Texas flair to it if we so choose. I would encourage that, actually. And then we can either dispense with our own unique branding, or we can keep our own unique branding. So it's up to the body. I'm not passionate one way or the other. But I would like us to consider it. I think the national branding standards look great, and we've got some great examples, some really great talented graphic artists who have put some examples on the forum.
And I am pulling that up right now. It's one of these discussions, I know.
Was that on the forum?
It's on Ignite.
It's an Ignite.
Under motions. Motions vote.
Point of information.
Yeah, can you run that while I find this?
Yes.
When would the rebranding take place?
As soon as this body adopted the new branding, I'm not saying we need to adopt it now. The motion is that we shall, not that we need to decide on the brand today. Ben?
Are we in discussion at this point?
We we are.
Let me ask this. Are you moving this?
So moved, yes.
Is there a second? We are now in discussion.
Information, is it by branding or just simply talking about the iconography or any other substantial change?
I'm talking about our logo for our letterhead, social media, all of
Essentially
those
just the
things.
iconography.
LP Texas brand.
LP Texas brand. Okay.
So to me, this is one of those things, it's just a really bad idea that SLEC does this sort of stuff. It's just a really large, but just basically you end up where no one's happy. So my suggestion has always been with this sort of thing is, hey, let's raise money and hire a professional PR/marketing firm to come back with 5 examples. That also never works out. So ultimately, we do have a marketing department and a PR department, yet perhaps those should be the ones who go off and then bring a couple of examples back to us that we then pick between.
That is precisely why I brought this up on the forum and asked for those talented graphic artists on the body to give us some examples so that we can have something to consider ahead of time.
And those examples are behind you now, by the way. Or one of them. I can scroll, but.
That example.
All right, thank you, Cinco.
Eric.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to suspend conversation about this until the next time we meet. I just think campaigns are in swing right now. I'd almost like to amend the motion, honestly, to have a serious discussion about branding in the next time we meet. As far as like Robert's rules and all that, to achieve that, so postpone indefinitely, whatever. I think this is great. I got to ride down here with James, who's awesome with graphic stuff, and we talked like for hours on it. I think it warrants a great discussion. I support it, but I don't know if the timing is right.
Yeah. No candidate is going to be required to change their marketing for this election.
Was that a second? Was that a motion?
Second. Were you making a motion? Discussing the motion.
You didn't know. I was discussing the motion and asking a point of order at the same time. If I wanted to suspend or a point of information.
Okay. There's a second to that motion. So at this point, we go into debate on postponing. Do we need to debate postponing? Yes. Do you feel you sufficiently spoken to your motion?
I'm not going to.
Is there someone who wants to speak against? Ms. Wilford.
I think the best thing that we can do is to adopt this branding as soon as possible. As has been mentioned before, our adoption of this branding does not require any of our candidates to adopt that branding as well. In fact, many of our candidates have already adopted this branding with the expectation and hope that LP Texas would adopt this branding as soon as possible after convention. So I think it would be a service to our candidates who have expressed their support of this change for us to go ahead and adopt it now.
Is there someone to speak in favor of this motion? Right here. Mr. Ford.
I would suggest that we probably have a whole bunch of stuff already created on our letterhead or field branding. I would just assume let that run out, which would probably be after the election, as opposed to adopting this now. We got to change everything. Is there a fiscal consideration here at all?
Fiscal, no. We don't keep a lot of extra stationery. Go ahead.
I want to take that as a point of information and kind of address it. So the way I'm taking this motion, and I believe the way Stephen intended it, and correct me if I'm wrong when I say this, is that this is a motion that this is the way the party wants to go. I'm not planning on going out and spending a lot of money after this to do this. I'm not planning on not even planning on pushing it through till the election's over. But it does allow me to start to get prepared the same way that allows me to get prepared in the hiring staff situation, if this is what the body wants to do. And is that correct?
Sure. I will make the point that when I was first elected by the body to fill the unexpired term of Mark Miller, I have not ordered any business cards as vice chair, expecting that the branding would change because I didn't want to waste that money. I respect our budget that much. I need to get some business cards because I'm going to the Capitol and I'm lobbying and I'm meeting with legislators. So after this meeting, I need to order some business cards, whichever brand we're still with.
Mr. Vice Chair.
All right, to
Point
speak
of
in,
information.
point of information.
Point of information, please. Anastasia made comment, she used the phrase, this branding. That branding that I'm looking at,
That's an example.
an example, so.
That's-
Oh, sorry, I meant national branding.
Yeah, that's
But
an
I
example.
saw
that-
several different takes on national branding.
Because there's some leeway. They
Right.
give us some standards, and we have the graphic artists on our team.
Correct. So adopting the template or the general national branding
Correct.
is what we're trying to make a motion for right now,
Correct.
not a specific picking one of these options.
Exactly right.
Okay, is there someone to speak against postponing, just to bring us back where we are?
I want
Ms.
to speak
Scripter.
against postponing. So I've been going up to our Tarrant County Elections Office a good bit and talking to them. One of the additional costs with elections are the colorful ballot boxes that we have, which are red or blue. So I think that going ahead and going with this will give us the opportunity to go to them and be like, this is our national colors. We want some black and gold boxes in here. You know, just this kind of thing, take the red and blue off all these election sites in the counties. I think we should just go ahead and vote on this now, get it over with, so everyone can order their cards and we can get this done.
And you've been pretty successful with your elections.
Oh yeah, there are no more donkeys and porcupines on the Tarrant County election site.
I don't know.
Okay, is there someone to speak in favor of postponing? Mr. Glass?
Yes, unlike earlier today where we talked about the party getting involved in helping candidates go block walking with data, which I think is very vital to the party and will change the electoral results. I don't think which logo we have will change a single vote out there to make us vote one way or the other. I think this is a very minor issue that we need to spend very little time on.
I agree. I think we
yeah.
should vote.
And at the same time, I have my personal preferences. I love the Statue of Liberty. I love the state of Texas, and I love the shape of the Texas. I like our logo the way it is, and I don't see why we need to change it. So I say let's put it off and wait because it's not worth messing with.
Okay.
Move to call all pending questions.
Well, hold up. People haven't been recognized. I have seen Schaefer, right?
Eric.
Yeah.
Van Siegel.
Van Siegel, that's what it is.
I would like to withdraw my motion for postponement with the understanding that we will not select a specific brand today, but instead vote that we will try to go with this.
We can't do it once it's been seconded.
Okay.
Ms. Glass?
Vote it down then.
I have a request for information.
Yes.
Has the National Party done any market research, done any focus groups with this, any sort of data that we can share with us if we consider it?
If they have, I'm not aware of it.
I'm not aware of it.
It looks like Donald Trump's hair.
Because, I don't know why anybody would adopt gray as a color. I really don't.
So our
It's been blue and gold since the beginning, and I think it works well.
so our secretary does have
I was
some.
just gonna say, I was on the national committee where we adopted the branding, and it was just what we preferred. It wasn't market tested.
It was just what? I'm sorry.
It was just what we preferred.
It was not market
Well,
tested.
I suggest that before we change, make this endeavor, which I think is a big commitment, drastic change, we do some actual market research to see how people respond to both the colors and the.
Okay. I see Mr. Golston there for a while.
I am serious.
Mr. Golston.
I have serious problems, especially with the logo they selected. Many, I suppose that most people in here have already read my essay. No matter what we do, I really cannot handle a logo that symbolizes what I see there. It's a lot like our former state party motto that passed unanimously because nobody could see the problems immediately until they got home and thought about it for a while, which was socially conservative, socially tolerant. And the more you think about that phrase, the more you're going to hate it. Let's not have
the standard right now during the election cycle is every once in a while, either national or one of the other state parties does something that is special. And do we really want to be that associated during our election cycle with someone who is espousing beliefs that pretty much are universally abhorrent?
Ms. Wilford?
If we vote to postpone adoption of these branding standards, what you're gonna end up seeing is that if we have a meeting in January, it's then going to be another 6 months before we actually implement anything. If we vote now to adopt these standards, then for the people who are concerned about us waiting until after the election, if we adopt these now, we can start putting together our digital materials that we'll push out to all of the counties, not forcing anybody, to be clear, to adopt any of this, but providing it to them as we do whenever new counties affiliate. We give them all the stuff according to our current branding standards that we can. It will allow us time to prepare things like the statewide candidate rat cards that I'd like for us to get out this time. It will allow us to check every square inch of our website and make sure that we have every graphic that we need so that we can transfer it all in the middle of the night one night and everybody wakes up one morning shortly after the election with a brand new, pretty fresh website. But if we put this off, we're looking at the middle of 2019 before we ever actually see this happen. If we do it now, we have a chance to wake up sometime mid-November and hopefully mid-November and see this actually come to fruition.
Point of inquiry.
Point of information, yes.
Point of information. I'm doing design for a customer right now. I'm locked in on color, I'm locked in on font size. Are we talking something that strict here, or is there a lot of wiggle room and this is kind of a moot point? That
So I believe what it has is, it has the logo, has standards on spacing of the logo, it has 3 fonts, and it has color codes. Is there anything else you're aware of that's in that standard?
Point of information?
I'm going to just fix this one first.
Right off the top of my head, I don't know. I think we are allowed to use the torch as an eye, and somewhere in there we can move that around. So we have some options like that, and we can adopt whatever logo we want with these grants. So we can put a Texas, our own flair to that to still make it.
So the answer to my question is pretty loose.
There's some
I think that's a subjective term, so I'm having trouble telling you what you consider loose or tight. But that's what's in there.
There are 2 more colors that aren't on this palette here as well, by the way.
Yeah.
There's a blue and a purple.
So with that said, time has expired, so I can entertain 2 kinds of things: privileged points of information or motions to extend.
Point of information.
Point of information, yes.
Now, if I'm understanding this correctly, isn't the Tippets campaign already using basically the national branding standards? And are our other national ticket candidates using it or using the Texas LP standard? Perhaps Mr. Dyke could weigh in.
Yeah.
Yes,
I know you're on the campaign.
The person who's doing the graphics for the Tippets campaign, I can say yes, we are 100% using this branding.
Okay. All right, and I don't know about any other candidates who, I know some candidates have and some candidates haven't. I don't know that much. But that said, I see no more hands, so we can proceed to a vote on all pending items. Our first vote will be whether or not to postpone this motion. And I'm going to bring the motion back on the screen, actually, if I can find my mouse, for everyone's benefit. Okay, so the first will be whether or not to postpone this motion. All in favor of postponing this motion to the meeting after the election, raise your hand. All opposed? That fails. Next, we will proceed with the vote on adopting the motion of using the published branding standards from the National Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party of Texas shall update our logo templates for all media. All in favor of that motion, raise your hand. All opposed? I'm pretty sure that carries, but I'm going to do a count on this one. There seems to be. All in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 25, 17, it carries. All right. Thank you so much. I believe Ms. Wilford is next. 5 minutes for county update? No. Order. Is there a presentation I need to bring up or anything?
No, I just need to use your computer.
Okay.
Or my computer. No, your
No,
computer.
here. Go ahead. You want to do it from the seat? Or do you want me to move it over? What do you want?
I can do it from the seat. I just want you to get out of the way.
Real quick, I want to see if yes.
Where is this body is voted to move to Brand Company Road
All right, we have a resignation. Mr. Golston resigned.
From SLEC or from the graphics committee?
From SLEC, correct? Correct. So. If you want, we can put the computer on the podium.
How do I get over there?
Left.
There you are. I am?
Yes.
Okay.
It might be easier for up there. Oh, and what was the time of your minutes? It's
15.
Start. Do not put this one. And I'll feed you for it. Yep.
I'm going to come from here.
Okay.
Yeah, but then it's going to be behind me.
Whichever you want.
I'm going to do this.
That's fine. Order. Order.
All right. So, one of the reasons that I wanted to get this on the agenda is
Order, please.
is because this body consists of, first of all, the premier leaders of the organization. Secondly, it includes a boatload of new people that I'm really happy to have, but I want to make sure that as the leaders of the organization, you know how to utilize our resources and how to direct others to utilize our resources. So with that, I want to give you a little bit of an overview of what you have super easy access to all through just our website. All the ways that you can help people get involved, all the ways that if you choose to, you can get involved yourself, and all of the documents and information that you do have right at your fingertips here. So, first things first, we have several tabs. Yes.
Would it be possible for somebody to record this separately, as this is giving instructions that can be put on the website, so Anastasia doesn't have to do this over and over
Is
again?
this on the live stream?
It's on the live stream and it's recording on my computer, so we can cut this out.
Okay, thank you.
Good idea. So what you have up here are several tabs that give you lots and lots of options. First things for SLEC at least, this is the State Executive Committee page. This is where your picture and your contact information is going to be listed based on the office that you hold. You'll notice it's got our officers up top and it's got the districts in order, and then if both positions are filled, alphabetically by last name. Oops, there we go. So, if you want to update your picture on this page, send it to it@lptexas.org. If you want to update your picture or your phone number or your email address,
send that to it@lptexas.org. The emails on here are going to go to your forwarding email address, an email address that you can give out publicly without having to disclose your personal email address. That's going to be the letters SD as in Senate District and your district number. If your district number is less than 10, it's going to be 01, 07, 09. Otherwise, it's 11, 16, 21. So there's that.
Wait, put 0.
Finish that, so it's SD24.
At lptexas.org.
.org, not .com.
Yes. Now, one of the questions that you are likely to get, and a tool that you can use to figure out what counties to target if you are in one of the larger districts that includes multiple counties, is our county chairs page. And that is going to list all of the currently affiliated counties in the state, along with the contact information for those county chairs. This internet is bad.
Oh, I know.
So it's going to have their phone numbers, when they were elected, and additionally it's going to have their forwarding email address. So if somebody in Bandera County reaches out and says, how do I get involved? You say, you can contact Kirk Price at bandera@lptexas.org. It's right there. It's easy for you to get to.
Can I say something on this real quick? For county chairs who we don't have their phone number listed on here, we put the party's number and it goes to a voicemail box, and I get a significant number of voicemails of, hey, this is the county elections department, or hey, this is some news organization, and we're trying to reach a county chair. If you happen to be friends with any of these county chairs that have the state party number listed on there, and you want to go bug them, I support you.
Yes.
Let's get their numbers up here.
All right. So a couple of other things that we have on here. We have our candidates page. Anybody who wants to know who's going to be on the ballot, that's the place you go. Again, set up just like the SLEC page and the county chairs page. It's going to have their picture, their contact information, with our candidates, if they've got any social or anything like that, it's going to have that linked as well. We've also got here our state platform and our state rules, and a listing of our staff members.
Is the platform and rules updated?
Yes. Yeah, platform and rules is updated as of the state convention. You'll see here, not only does it list each of the departments, but it's going to list which positions we have that are not currently filled. And it's going to have a link here to applying for that position. And for each position that is filled, it's going to have means to contact those people. Now, this is going to be where anybody that you reach out to who says, I want to help, I don't know how to, this is your central hub. If you're talking to somebody in an unaffiliated county, this is simply a form page. That is the county chair application. When they fill that out, it's going to come to the operations department. Carrie is going to respond to that, contact them, set up their interviews. If you're not familiar, our interview process for county chairs includes Carrie as our county coordinator, although it would be whoever our county coordinator is, one of our state officers, and a SLEC member. Ideally, the member in their district. So, on that note, kind of harkening back to earlier, please make sure your contact information is up to date. We don't want to have to wait until we see you in person. We don't want to have to hunt you down through somebody else. If your contact information changes, let us know so that we can reach out to you and schedule those interviews. They're a lot of fun to do, and these are people in your districts who you're going to be representing. So it is fantastic to get to develop those relationships with them from the get-go. Next, if you have anybody who, these are actually all forms. If you have anybody who wants to run for office, that's where you send them. It's going to have options for them to select what kind of office they want to run for. Tell us a little bit about that. Whenever that form gets filled out, it actually is not just going to come to us, but it does actually get forwarded to the county chair for their county as well, assuming their county is affiliated. If it's not, we then discuss with them options as far as that goes. In fact, we had at least one, if not a couple counties, got affiliated before the filing period, simply because they wanted to run for office. Either they applied themselves or they had somebody else they knew who applied. We also have here a volunteer staff application. That's going to be to fill any of the positions that we have, that we looked at on this page. This one has actually been republished very recently, and that one needs to come off the website. Okay, this is the committee application. So each term, we SLEC as a body is responsible for filling the, there it is, okay. Is responsible for filling the platform, rules, credentials, committees, and then a lot of times we also fill some other committees as well. Policy, legal, convention planning, and a recent addition, the National Delegate Nominating Committee. This is something that has been discussed with several leaders in the party. This does not mean, other than the Rules, Platform, and Credentials Committee, that does not necessarily mean SLEC is required to create those committees, but it will allow us to know if there are people interested in those. I would recommend anybody on SLEC who wants to fill those positions, go ahead and fill that out. And then of course you can disseminate something like this to anybody in your district to see if there are people there who want to fill those positions as well. Yes?
I do want to make the comment because I get this question every term. There is not a committee thus far that we are required to create that has to be filled by SLEC members. Anybody can be a member of these committees. And as far as other committees, it's up to you whether they have to be a SLEC member or not. So if you have people who want to get involved, who maybe ran for SLEC and didn't get it, but they would still like to be involved, these are great ways for them to help.
At a future meeting, tradition, as long as I've been involved, has been to take these applications and decide from them, sometimes with a few other nominations as well, who it is that we want to fill these committees. So it has a series of questions. Served on a committee, on an LP Texas committee before. Have you ever been a delegate to one of our conventions? Are you familiar with our rules, our platform? Are you affiliated? And have you ever donated, and how many years have you been involved? How many hours do you have to give? So it gives us a fairly well-rounded idea of who is applying for these, how they've been involved, how they want to be involved. So keep that in mind. That's something that we will likely be seeing at a meeting in the future. Yes, ma'am?
I recently applied to be a membership coordinator, I think a week ago. When can I expect to hear back from somebody?
I can discuss that with you after the meeting. Okay. All right. And then this is that last one is a general volunteer form. That is basically just, I want to volunteer, but I don't know, I'm not sure about any of these, but I still want to do something. Those also get forwarded to our county chairs, and we do reach out to them specifically with campaigns going on right now. We're forwarding a lot of those when we get those to our campaigns.
Not to add to your workload, but it would be helpful if we had a list of priority spots that need to be filled so we know what to recruit for.
Good idea. You want to make that? What? Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Anything in the political department is a priority right now. And PR, now that we adopted new branding. So, any events that are going on, we do have an events calendar. It's kind of empty right now because we're not getting a lot of submissions on it. We have reached out to our candidates, letting them know that if they have any events, that we can put them on the website. And you can stop that. Okay, sorry. We do have this. Whenever you submit the form, it goes to events@lptexas.org, and we get it published on there just as soon as we can. We do also have, this was published ahead of the convention that gave people various different resources, things about being a delegate, proposals and that sort of thing. We also have recently put on here our policy manual. These are candidate forms such as your application for nomination, certification of nominees. We have an online means for our counties to submit business meeting minutes. One of the things that we have had the most trouble with between elections is when there's a changeover in leadership and we don't get any record of it. So we have actually made it nice and easy. They can go in, list everybody who was there, who's submitting the documentation, which we do verify, that it came from the source that it said it came from, and what business was conducted this way. Whenever leadership changeovers happen, we know, and we can know quickly and get that represented on our website as well. We do have a few FAQs. We're looking to flush this out, so if you look on there and you see anything that is missing, please feel free to write one out, and we'll have somebody look over it for grammar and syntax, and we'll put it up there as well. And finally, probably, yes.
Is taxation cut?
Yes. Yes, in fact, well, I thought I saw a sign earlier, but yes, it is. Should we put that on the website?
We should.
Let's do it.
But anyway, there are several FAQs on there. If you see something that you think is missing, hit us up. I will be asking you to write it up yourself because our volunteers are very busy. But I'm sure you're all willing to do that. Go ahead.
Excuse me, Anastasia. Is it possible that if one of our candidates wins an election, that the credibility of his candidacy could be questioned at the county that he is from, perhaps doesn't have his paperwork straight?
It depends on what office they're running for, what paperwork it is that maybe is not correctly or is not in order. So, in theory, then if it was their application for nomination and they submitted to somebody that we don't have on record as being the county chair, in theory that could happen. But that's part of the reason that we really do stress this. Finally, the last item in resources is governing documents. That's going to include links to our rules, our policy, and our SLEC bylaws. And those are going to be the things that are most critical to the business that we do here, each meeting that we have, and any forum votes or anything like that that we take in between. So definitely that is probably going to be, as far as governing the state party, most critical for you guys. Any questions?
Well, there's not really time for questions unless we want to extend, but I do appreciate you entertaining for point of information. Yes.
I think we have our political director here, Eric Darren's been here all day. Would it be germane to this amount of time to extend so we can hear from Eric Darren?
Does he have his own thing?
He's not.
He's not. Can I ask a question of Eric? Because I know I had some discussion with him earlier. Do you want to, and were you prepared to present?
My department prepared a report, which is on Ignite, for everybody to be able to read, but being that this is the first meeting of this session and knowing there's a lot going on, it was not our intention to take any time on the floor today.
Well, if you would like, the county's update that I was allotted 5 minutes for is actually going to be very quick unless anybody has any questions, and I would be happy to cede my time to Eric, should the body have no objection. And Eric has something he wants to talk about. I hear none. Okay, so county's update. We currently have 67 affiliated counties. Whenever we went into precinct conventions, we had 81. That was a record. We have never had so many affiliated counties in the state before. We did lose, 14 counties, which is a lot. However, it is less by number and by percent than we have ever lost from conventions before, which is phenomenal. It is, as Mr. Wilford pointed out earlier, we are always growing, and that is a huge sign that we are growing. Not only that, but the people who are stepping up are more committed than they've ever been. Yes.
How do counties get lost?
If they don't file to hold their precinct and county conventions, they automatically become unaffiliated according to state election code. Yes. We have appointed 2 new county chairs in Madison and B counties, and we've had 2 resignations in Leon and Wise counties. which is why the number that we had of counties who held their precinct and county conventions is the same as it was, or is the same as our currently affiliated counties. We do have one person who has applied for county chair in Austin County, and Carrie is speaking with them about getting their interviews scheduled. And I actually spoke with someone just a few minutes ago about applying in Nolan County. So hopefully we will have two in the pipes and not just one before long. Yes.
I will just say for the record that I think those good results came largely because of the strong activity of our current Lieutenant Governor candidate, Kerry McKinnon, and we thank him so much for what he's done. Open Kerry.
Yes.
Well, in the past, we've had counties that I call it gone dark.
Mm-hmm.
They basically quit responding when y'all try to communicate with them. Do you have any idea if that, I doubt it's much a problem as it was, but do you have any idea how many counties that might be that way now?
It is far less of a problem than it's ever been in the past. And one of the, it sounds terrible that we lose counties because they're not holding their precinct and county conventions. However, it is a natural filter to losing those counties who have gone dark. So immediately following conventions, we will have a higher proportion of counties who are active, involved, engaged, and communicative. And so I don't have a specific number for you right now, but I can tell you we've lost several that we knew had gone dark. So our proportion is much better than it used to be. Yes.
Before we have, I don't know what John called it, we adopted a county,
Mm-hmm.
and I consider that still in effect, but do we need to discuss that?
We haven't seen a lot of results from that. It's not in effect, but from the applications that we've gotten, very few of them have said to have come from someone who adopted that county with the goal of affiliating it. I think probably the primary driver is just us being out there, getting the news, beating the streets whenever we are in town on business or whatever the case may be, going on a vacation to the coast or something like that. I really think that's where this is coming from. If anybody wants to adopt a county and drive an effort to try to affiliate that county, I am more than happy to, I have no say in allowing them to do that, but I will cheer you on as you do it.
Provide data.
Yeah, provide data. But I will provide data and cheer you on as you do it. So it's not in effect, but it has not been something we've seen a lot of results from. Yes.
Yeah, Kathy's question kind of stole my thunder, but I was kind of wondering, are there any counties you're focusing on, or is it anything we can do with SLEC with this, or do you have resources?
Is this related?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It's been our ST3 meeting. So we met as a district and looked at all of the unaffiliated counties and decided as a local group we looked at festivals and things that we could go and show a presence there in unaffiliated areas so we could bring more of our areas in our specific district up.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that Carrie and I did last term was we actually looked at Mark Miller's numbers and the number of contacts that we had in Nation Builder at the time, and we found the top 5 counties, top 5 unaffiliated counties receiving votes. All of those were over 5%, and it was our goal to target those. Not remembering completely offhand, I want to say we affiliated 2 out of those 5.
For how long?
Okay.
5 minutes. Motion to extend for 5 minutes, second. Is there objection? I hear no objection. 5 more minutes.
Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. One more thing to add to that. I was actually going through select minutes not too long ago, and one of the efforts, or one of the proposals in there was to focus on affiliating the top 10 most populous unaffiliated counties. I think that was actually one of your proposals. And we've come a long way with that, although there are still a few. So probably what Carrie and I are going to be doing this term, now he has been busy with this campaign, so we haven't talked specifically about this, but what I would expect is that we are going to focus on those remaining counties from the list of 5 before and focus on where there's not crossover, the remaining top 10 most populous counties that are currently unaffiliated. John, and then Scott, and then Liz.
So I have a question actually about a specific county. It was asked, are there any priority counties? And there is one county that's near and dear to my heart for two reasons. One that will become apparent later, and the other because my dear grandparents live there. Not the most populous, but what's the current status on Liberty County?
So we had somebody who had stepped up to be county chair in Liberty. That person did not file their precinct and county convention paperwork. So unfortunately, we have lost Liberty County, but we will be getting it back.
I think we need more Liberty in Liberty County.
This is for the body. Carrie says thank you for the round of applause.
Yeah.
So since we've approved purchasing data now for the statewide side, I think that it would be prudent for people in counties around here who might want to just start giving data. I think it might help with these county updates in our top 10 counties that we want to.
That would be fantastic.
Yes, a small correction, Liberty did file their notices, but they didn't poll.
Oh, sorry, that's what I meant. You're right.
That's another way you
Yes.
can file, but if you don't show it.
Right.
So all truck drivers.
Yeah, it happens.
But Liberty's dear to my heart too.
Yes.
So I was the champion for that before, and I'm gonna.
Awesome. Yeah, I do want to clarify, I had mentioned earlier that counties become unaffiliated, and we talked about dark counties. Just because a county becomes unaffiliated because they didn't hold precinct or county conventions or didn't file for them, does not necessarily mean that that person didn't care, wasn't involved, something like that. There was a county that we lost that a guy just, life happened and he couldn't do it. So it does not necessarily mean that that is not the sort of person that we want involved, or anything negative about them at all. But there is a significant proportion of those that fall off just because they had gone dark. Any other questions?
A quick request for information, actually. Is Mr. Wilfer, are you aware that we had two people kind of get upset and leave, and now our quorum numbers have changed? Has that been?
One left. He actually said he had an appointment, and our quorum number has changed as we have.
Three leave on my count. We had Mr. Golston, Mr. Dypen, and Mr. Flynn leave.
Yes, yeah. So our quorum number has changed because we had a resignation. Actually, it hadn't changed.
Who's the third person that left?
Mr.
Golston, Dypen, and Flynn.
Flynn. But I do recognize we have well more than 29, so our quorum is well intact.
I'm not worried about quorum, just for if it's a difference between a majority or not.
Anything else?
No.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric, you've got
Point of information.
Yes.
I don't see Bill Dyckman anywhere on the agenda. They say he's gone. I mean, is there an explanation for that?
He was referencing in reference to quorum. I think he was just making sure we're good on people.
Well, I just wanted it to be right.
I just want to know why he's not on the agenda, and was that why he left?
He told me he would.
He said we were dysfunctional and he left.
But did he resign?
He didn't say to the
Yeah. All right, Eric, please. I'm gonna go ahead and add this minute back because. Go ahead.
Hey everybody, my name's Eric Guerra. I'm the new political director for the party here. Thank you. So I've been in that position since late May, so just getting started in it, kind of getting used to the position and whatnot. Got a great team. Mr. Rene Perez is my coalition liaison. Alan Miller, who was here earlier, is our legislative administrator, and Eugene Flynn, who unfortunately had to leave, is a data analyst for us. So kind of what we've been working on. President Lee is getting ready for the legislative session, looking for new coalitions that we can form with groups. You know, we're gonna have our normal ones with Texas Normal, and any Second Amendment stuff that comes up. We're trying to find smaller issues that we can work with non-traditional libertarian groups on that one specific issue that we have overlap on, and maybe try to bring them to the light and see that government needs to be small everywhere, not just in this particular issue. So I met with the Secular Coalition for America. They were actually at the National Convention, and formed the Secular Caucus, which Mr. Arthur Thomas is secretary of. So that's pretty awesome. They're a great group, got a lot of resources. This is on the report as well, so if you want any additional information, reach out to me. Been meeting with the...
Thank you.
How long? 5 minutes. Let's do 5 minutes. Is there a second? Is there objection?
Yes. Motion to amend.
What's the amendment?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Is there a second on 2 minutes?
Second.
Is there objection?
Yes.
There's. All in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. All opposed to the amendment, raise your hand. The amendment passes. Now we need 2/3 to actually suspend the time. All in favor of suspending 2 minutes to hear from Eric, raise your hand. All opposed? It passes.
Okay, awesome. So I'll keep this brief. I meet with the Libre Initiative here in Austin. They are part of the Americans for Prosperity umbrella, geared specifically at promoting liberty ideals and free market principles within the Hispanic and Latino community. So we're going to try to organize some stuff on the county level here, but they're really interested for the legislative session on property tax issues, so they'll be a good ally in that. And let's see, what else? I've met with representatives from Log Cabin Republicans, Young Republicans, and the Democrat Veterans of Texas in an effort to try to organize a debate/forum. We were looking at CD21. We're looking at races with all 3 parties present. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Chip Roy is wanting to participate, the Republican, in that. Shocking, yes, I know. So we're going to keep looking at other possible venues, but that was actually initiated by the Democratic group there. So they're interested in trying to do a tripartisan debate/forum. So we're looking at that as well.
At lunch, we raised the topic of trying to work on legislation for this next session to at least get it going, to make it where when you get above 20% in the governor's race, you still have a choice of convention or primary party. Have you guys considered that? In other words, if we ever get to the point where we do it, all parties have a choice of convention or primary. You're not forced into going primary once you get to 20%.
Okay. That's an awesome one. I would love to get with you more on that. That's how much specifically we've been looking at as far as that regard. But again, it's just been about a month and a half that I've been in this position, so still kind of getting my feet grounded in that regard.
Hey, on the ballot, we had a special election, and our candidate, his name had LIB period. Is there any way we get the Secretary of State that they would spell out libertarian being called lib in our district? Is not great.
Yeah, here we go.
Hang on, we looked into this a couple years ago.
We have some more recent if you want me to answer.
Okay, go ahead.
So there has been some conversation with the Secretary of State. There has been some conversation with the Secretary of State. They don't care what's next to our candidate, but it has to be 3 letters. So there's been some discussion on what those letters should be.
TIT.
Yeah. Anyway, so there is ongoing discussion to try and get that changed, but it cannot be libertarian. So.
Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, with that said,
Just on your quick thing, the 3 letters, they also can't be R, E, P, or D, E, N?
right,
Okay.
yeah. I wouldn't want them to be. Next up, we have motions related to the Texas Libertarian Facebook group. And Stephen Harris, if you can come forward, and I'll pull up the folder. I think there's something in there.
All right, I know there's some motions prepared. What I'm going to ask is that you let Andrew and I do our presentation, and then we'll entertain the motions. So we're going to do a point, counterpoint kind of presentation, and I'm going to speak in favor of dissolving or getting rid of the group, and Andrew's going to speak to keeping it. A little history. The group was created by Jeff Dahl. It came to the state party under Lauren Daugherty's executive directorship and has grown from about 1,800 or so to 2,200 or so. That number is a little deceiving because there's only about 200 maybe that actually participate, and if the ones that participate regularly is probably 50. During the campaign, before convention, the group became toxic. And I'm gonna blame the campaigns, not the candidates, but there were several campaigns that were going back and forth and bickering, and it got really nasty. We had to delete tons of posts. We ended up removing a couple of people. One was put back.
Point of personal privilege. I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you mind taking the gavel, and would anyone on the body have any issue with that while I step out for a minute?
Go get your smoke. If we're going to have a Facebook group as an asset of the party, it really needs to be an asset and not a liability. And I think during the campaign season especially, the group was a terrible liability to us. It's not just about the echo chamber that we're creating for ourselves so we can debate issues. That's all good, and there's lots of groups out there where we do that. But if it's an asset of the party, then we have people from outside the party looking at it to get a sense of whether or not they want to be a part of our party, and we're turning them away. If they look at us and we look dysfunctional, they don't want to have anything to do with that. For that reason, I think this group should not be an asset of the party. What happens to the group, I don't care, as long as LP Texas is not linked to the group.
Into the lion's den we go. Guys, I want you to know that I have not given up on the Facebook group because I have not given up on this group. I think that this committee, this new committee for 2018 to 2020, has the opportunity to make a few minor changes that would make this a productive asset for the party. It's not that hard to run a Facebook group. All we need is permission to take care of a couple of toxic individuals who tend to troll the group and create a lot of discord. Without that, we would have a place you can send inquirers, we could refer people for more information, we could have a public-facing group that would be able to build the party. I'd like to address specifically, well, I want y'all to know, I think we have the creativity, I think we have the collective creativity to solve problems, and I think we have the collective will to get stuff done. So far, that hasn't happened. Last term, we were not able to solve some of the problems that were coming up with the Facebook group. It got to be committed time, things got postponed, moderators were instituted, moderators resigned. It's been kind of a mess. Now that we're out of the convention season, now that that's behind us, it's really simmered down. Like the fire that we were trying to put out is already out. Like that's not a problem at this point. The problem is where we do with it now going into election season when we're trying to get some candidates elected. So two things. Number one, there's a thing, it's kind of a mantra really going around that there's no value in this group. I don't know about that. I mean, y'all saw Stephen's statistics. There are a lot of groups that would love to have 5,000 share reach with spikes to 125,000. That's not an insignificant number. That's a value to the party. In addition to that, between Stephen and I, we identified maybe 35, 40 as people apply for membership in the Facebook group. They're asked if they're already a member of LP Texas, and if not, would they like to join LP Texas?
Point of information, I'm so sorry.
What's that?
The 5,000 shares, that was on the page, not the group, right?
That's true, but a lot of those shares are to the group and from the group.
Okay.
They're asked if they want to join, if they're interested in joining the party, and out of the many more people that have asked to join the group, we forwarded about high 30s specific individuals to membership to be followed up with to join the party. If they're going to become dues-paying members or volunteers, then that is real value to the group. We have 40 people that become basic members, that's $1,000 a year, that's 4 months, annualize that, that's $3,000 a year to the party. I get it, I mean, not all those people are gonna convert, that would be a different issue. We would want to be able to look at that, and if we have a funnel that's bringing people to our doorstep, so say, yes, here's my phone number, I wanna be able to join LPT, and we can't convert them to membership, that would be that's not a Facebook problem. that's a different problem, right? So, I believe there is value in the group. We're gaining members, we're gaining potential new members for the party, and we have a certain amount of reach through the group. The only other thing I want to mention, I don't want to take a lot of time since time's kind of a touchy, that's been brought up a lot around this Facebook group. But the context for this decision, normally bodies such as this, if you're going to make a decision about whether to change a group or change moderators or dissolve a group, or give away an asset that's bringing in members and reaching the public, then you would want to have a context in which to make that decision. You want to know, how is this going to affect our strategy? How is this going to affect our mission? How is this going to help us or hurt us if we make this decision? Right now, today, we would have to say, what strategy? What mission? SLEC has never spoken authoritatively about what we're trying to do with this group. That's where the creativity and the will come in. Like, we could throw away a 300 plus member group, or we could make a couple of changes that aren't that difficult to figure out and not that hard to implement. But we've been running, I think, ever since convention time, and then knowing we have a new committee as well. Going back to last fall, when some changes were made, it's been this kind of lame duck, well, we can't really do this, we got a convention plan, we'll handle it later, Convention comes and goes, we'll handle it later. And now, some people are kind of tired of waiting about that, they want to go ahead and get rid of the group. I just think that's a bad move. I think it's an ill-considered move. And this particular committee, this term, hasn't even had a chance to look at this yet and see what the options are. So I would advise that we delay the irrevocable remedy, of getting rid of the group, and either appoint a committee, or there are different mechanical ways. The tactics are the details, but there are different mechanical ways that we could actually review this situation, make a well thought out decision, and then go from there. I know for a fact we have the creativity. What we're going to find out here in a minute is whether we have the will. So, yes?
What period of time do you think you would need to put into place the changes that you say need to be done so that we could see a difference?
Well, the immediate change would be to review the rules of engagement, the policy. We have, I think there are a couple of tweaks we can make to our the group's definition and rules. And then the moderator board, I guess, just three of us now. Well, it's three of us, and that's.
Is Mike Lee still a moderator?
Okay, yeah, Mike Lee. We had one moderator go rogue here like a month ago, and just really, that's a no-brainer. So we would look at the moderator group, and we would get some other level-headed guys like us, we hope, to get up there and try to run the thing even-handedly, fairly, and in accordance with just some real basic, no censorship, no oppression, no factionalism, just some very simple rules of civility that are designed to make this a place where we can sell the party to people who want to join. Come on, who's against growing the membership?
Request for information. Are we going to have time? Here, I don't know how to handle this. Come back to your prayer.
Michelle's presentation, I believe. Sorry, two somewhat separate points I want to point out. One, there seems to be some discussion as to whether or not it's an asset. Facebook groups with that many members have a cash value. It absolutely is an asset. We're not talking about whether it's an asset or not. We're talking about disposition of an asset that has value. So let's be clear on that. Second, I am a moderator of a 50,000 member group on LinkedIn. When I first started, I got enough. I'm running for office too. When I first started, engagement was down, spam was up, there were massive problems. And it wasn't until we actually set up rules. And a lot of people were fighting setting up rules. Good fences make good neighbors. The second we had rules, spam went down, engagement went up. Everything did great right up until LinkedIn screwed the groups. But good fences make good neighbors. We don't know what this group could do because we've never actually managed it.
I think Joe's had the same experience with new libertarians, that, you know, chaos until some basic rules put in place, and then the next thing you know, 20.
That's why I wanted to speak to that during debate, but I didn't know if we were in presentation or
Well,
in debate.
yeah, thanks presentation, I just been connecting it, but yeah, I'm sure you'll have things later. Who's
Liz?
Liz?
I have a couple questions, if y'all don't mind me asking a couple. You mentioned some toxic individuals. Who are you referring to?
I don't have any names, and frankly, all of that, I'd rather, as he said, that had more to do with the campaigns and the infighting that's associated. This was my first state convention, so I don't know if that's normal. Do you need this? I don't know if that's normal, but it got a little hairy, like the internal bickering, you know, leading into convention. But that's behind us now. We're focused on an election where it's us against them.
Since you said individuals, I thought you had someone in mind.
Oh, sorry, no, I'm not picking on any.
Okay,
We're not gonna name names. We're not naming names. We're not naming names today.
Well, that's actually part of the issue here is we're talking about censoring people having access. So when you say individuals, I want to know who we're keeping out of here. You know, like whose voice are we silencing on that? So you say we converted 30 plus party members?
No, I didn't say we converted 30 plus. I said 30 people. I said 35 or more asked, said, yeah, we'd be interested in joining the party. Here's my phone number. Here's my email address.
We don't.
I don't know. I sent that to membership. It's not
Okay,
right. Yeah.
because you mentioned
Anastasia may
$1,000,
know.
and I was wondering if that $1,000 came in.
No,
on
no,
that,
I
because
don't.
that was
Let's ask
implying that it's an
Anastasia.
asset, and we don't have the numbers to verify that.
In
Agree.
fact, one of the people who joined Texas Libertarians just a few days ago, I reached out, and they're here in Round Rock, and invited them to come to the meeting. Mike doesn't look like he's here yet. He was going to come toward the end to hopefully get to meet and greet some of you guys. I would guess, so I haven't run the numbers, we have probably somewhere between a 10 to 20% conversion rate. Many of the times when we reach out, we don't get a response, but we do reach out, and the majority of the responses, the vast majority of the responses that we get are here.
Okay, so like 3 to 5 people? Okay.
30.
And then the last question I have, and this is for somebody who actually understands how you can own a Facebook group. How do we define ownership? How do we emphatically say that this is what we own? Not just who's the administrator, but who actually owns it. And as a political party, are we violating any rules by attempting to potentially sell something that we can't prove that we own it?
So I can answer that a bit.
Point of information, just.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
went through that on Facebook not too long ago. From a completely legal standpoint, Facebook owns it. It's Facebook's website, they own it. From the contractual standpoint, the administrator of record of a group has possession of the group and can sell the group.
I heard a point of order.
Point of information,
Legally.
sir, is not an invitation to address the body, is that correct? It is a question?
Yeah, that is correct.
I misspoke.
So anyway, so there's one more financial legal issue that will arise out of this. Depending on how much we sell it for, it will not be considered what the rest of our income is, which is considered exempt income. So it may initiate filings with the IRS. But that depends on what the number is. So just to present that as well.
We sell a T-shirt for a donation, is that reportable?
If we get a donation and give a gift, that's fine. There are restrictions on that. Part of it has to be and this gets into another weird caveat. The value of the item has to hit certain ratios with the amount, so we have to way overprice our stuff when we give it for donations. And that gets back into what was the value. I don't know in an auction if we would have the ability to make that claim as well.
I know we have some motions pending, and we're gonna have debate on the motions themselves. So I'm gonna go with Cassie, and then we're gonna call for the motion.
I have a simple question for Stephen, well, for both of you. How many hours per week, how many hours per month do you think you spend moderating this group?
Collectively?
No, each one of you, like each volunteer that's sucked into this moderator hell, how many hours
It's been pretty peaceful. Before convention, I was spending an hour or two at least every night.
Okay.
And you kind of during the convention.
Yeah, when it was contagious.
Yeah.
So
But
like,
since convention, an hour a week.
Yeah, it's really been peaceful.
All right,
Wait a minute. To fix the group, what would you need SLEC to authorize you to do? So we don't have this come up again. To fix this group, what do you need this body to give you all the power to do?
Authorize, back us up when we enforce some very low-level rules of decorum, like case in point. Y'all tell me. I mean, maybe this is too much to ask.Maybe it really is more libertarian to just be a jerk. You know what I mean? But and we should just get used to it. You know, we're always it's going to be that way. But had a situation a week or so ago where somebody started referring to another class of people as cockroaches because of their political beliefs. It's over the matter of abortion, you know, and as everybody knows, libertarians are kind of mixed on that, depending on how they think about that, you know. So it depends on it's stuff like that where, or somebody calls my idiot the other day, like personal attacks, just personally insulting behavior. And unfortunately, what happens sometimes is we get in a situation. Everybody knows the no true libertarian logical fallacy, right? Or like the
I know it better than you do.
Yeah. So it would be nice. It would be really, really nice if SLEC would support the idea of growing the membership through Facebook, and the way we would have to be able to do that would be able to moderate some of our more libertarian members so that they wouldn't do things like insult people that are asking questions. That's the problem. People will come in there and say, well, you know what? I'd like to know more about this because I think that. And then invariably somebody will come and say, you think that? You're crazy. You don't belong here, you stupid Republican. Go back where you came from. It's that kind. If we can just kind of rein in a little bit of that kind of behavior, and hopefully we could do that with a certain amount of training or education. You know, we're not talking about censorship. We're not talking about booting people out of the group just for being themselves, you know, but just to be able to not run people off. Can you please just not do that? You know, that's all we want.
Again, I'm going to ask, since you're talking about booting people because of things that they say, what kind of things?
I said not to.
Well, censoring them, not having them say things, taking their comments off. What kind of things specifically, what kind of comments have you removed? Not asking for a name, what kind of comments are you removing?
I'll answer that one. If someone is starting a personal attack, we'll delete the comment.
Okay.
We try to just delete the comment and leave the original post. There have been occasions where the entire thread has gotten so toxic we've deleted the entire post.
Are you saving the screenshots of this data before you delete it?
Normally, we will screenshot it and share it with each other because we try not to act unilaterally on those, so we get consensus between the moderators. There's been occasions where it's been, if somebody's calling someone a jackass, I'm just going to delete it and I'm not going to ask because it's a blatant. So.
We tolerate a fair amount of pretty aggressive speech if there's any content in it at all. But if it just goes over into pure name-calling, childish insults, then that's just, at some point, or we can just agree that we're always going to be a 200-member group that's never going to grow because anybody new that walks in the door is going to get
we get reports where people can report posts or report comments, and we review those and we keep some and we delete some. Tim.
Yeah, thank you guys both for the presentation. I just wanted to address both of you. Thank you again for what you're doing and the thankless job. But isn't it true? And I just want to ask you guys both, you know, you're being very reasonable. You're talking about very reasonable moderation of a Facebook group, something like very, but as the pressure ramps up next November or next election cycle, you know, reasonable, was it good enough? I think you guys were doing a reasonable job, and you're talking about reasonable moderation, but it got out of hand. And I think what's really missing here is that there isn't a clear communications plan from the party. There isn't a clear marketing plan on the way we use Facebook as maybe a marketing department in any other organization would run it. It's allowed to be posted by members, which is typically not seen. A Facebook group is usually one-way communication. So what's really missing here is a strategy and a political, not strategy, but an actual marketing plan and a communications plan that would use the Facebook group to its full potential. So if SLEC doesn't provide you with that, and we just say again, once again, y'all just be reasonable and kick the can down the road, we're just back to where we were when you guys said it was out of control. And if you, it's calm now, that doesn't mean anything.
It'll ramp up.
Yeah, so
Would
is
you
it
have a
really what's
solution
missing
for
a
that?
communications plan?
Yes, would you have a solution for that?
So I wanted to speak on that. First of all, I like what you had to say. I think you're going to say it better than what I'm saying. But I think I'm going to add something. I'm looking at it from a new person's perspective that has never seen us before, okay? When they come in, they don't realize that there's a spectrum of mindsets. There's different categories of libertarians that are commenting on there. So some communications of different groups that make up our whole, so that when they go to the About Us, we can have, just something simple. I'm not talking about complex, but just something simple that delineates, there's these different spectrums of mindsets within our group. So as you see on the post, you'll see some disagreement, but we respect each other and we agree on certain things. Something simple, just so that people understand there's differing opinions, but we're all in the same libertarian mindset. There's just difference. So I think,
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that this body has failed to provide.
This body hasn't failed yet. Maybe the previous body.
And
I'm agreeing with you in the sense that I think we need to have better communication so new people have a better understanding about our distinctions.
Eric was next.
Yeah, I just want to ask you guys to please explain to the body, not everybody's as tech savvy as some others, the difference between a Facebook group and a difference between a Facebook page. I'm happy to explain, but I don't want to go out of Robert's rules. I think you guys can both feel that.
A page is usually one direction. We're pushing information out. Our page, we do allow comments, so there is some discussion on our page. The group is much more interactive, and every member has the opportunity to post content and to comment.
And for clarity, we're talking about the group.
We're talking about the group, absolutely.
The key word for the group is engagement. If we want to bring people into the party, if we want to convert inquirers into knowledgeable people, into members, then that's where the group functions better than a page.
We all know we have a big spectrum of opinions, and most of us respect the fact that we have a spectrum, but there are boundaries. Let's say, for example, God forbid, I posted something saying why asset forfeiture is a good idea. I would be run out of the party, rightfully so, and from Facebook and everything else. Because I argued that marijuana should be abolished. It's a really bad weed and so forth. I would be run off the page. So there are limits. Now, having said that, I do see a lot of things that appear on the page that are outside the libertarian spectrum, like
Page or group? Page or group?
The group.
Yeah, I think you mean
A group. Okay. There's a lot of dreck that comes up about immigrants. The Libertarian Party appreciates immigrants. There's always articles that get posted on that. There's articles that get posted on supporting the military. And for me, the military is the #1 federal agency that we must oppose. And yet, there's some gentleman who's posting, God bless our soldiers as they go off on military missions overseas stuff and war pornography, and which is what I call. So that's where and then Trump, people come on there and tell us we have to support Trump. Now, is that within your boundary or not? Do you believe those or not?
No. If we do not allow the promotion of other party candidates on the group, so we delete those posts.
Wasn't sure if it was me or behind me. This is not a motion, this is kind of taking the pulse of the body here for a minute. But I think we're down to basically the choice of either give up or try something. And that's something we try. There's no way we're going to decide today. So what would be your thoughts of us discussing rules over the next couple of weeks on the forum versus
something we have been discussing this on the forum.
I think some have been waiting for today.
We're kind of, how much we doing on time?
6 minutes.
6 minutes. If someone's gonna make a motion, this would probably be a good time to do that so that we can have some discussion on the motion. It has been moved.
And move that we decide between giving up the group or discussing online the path forward for the group with moderation.
Mr. Chair,
hold up. I understand. Okay, so you're making a motion that we decide something, but a motion is the method by which we decide something, so it kind of becomes circular. So,
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. I submitted my motion on the form.
I know.
It was the first to be submitted. It's on the board.
I do recognize that, and I was planning, if we're done with the presentation, on recognizing Mr. Martinez.
I'm sorry. Are you just saying his motion was out of order?
Yes.
Or, okay.
He was making a motion.
I did make a motion to postpone, to decide whether we're going forward or postpone the discussion of how we would keep the group.
So, okay, I want to hear it again because I'm not sure I was clear.
Okay. I guess I would be possibly amending that motion from keep the group or give the group away to, do we want to? Oh, well, I'm sorry, I haven't studied Robert's rules at length this week. I've been busy. But what I'm trying to say is, we're not going to decide how to form the group today, which they desperately need if we want the group to go forward. And so my thing is, can we table the discussion of how we want the group to go forward and discuss that for a month? That's my motion.
Point of order.
Point of order.
A motion was presented on this topic before we even got here. And so is his motion to amend this motion that's already been made?
Well, I said that I wanted to amend the motion, but I said the motion
So
wasn't clear.
here's where I think we are.
I was addressing the chair.
Here's where I think we are, and I think you need to correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
You're making a motion to dispense with this topic and move on to the agenda and to bring it up again at the next meeting. Is that your motion?
To continue the discussion online for
Okay.
rules.
So to dispense with this topic, move on to the agenda, and then to discuss things in the forum. And I heard somebody say that we're assuming we keep the group. If we dispense with this item, we will be keeping the group because we will not have made a motion to not keep the group. So, everybody have
Point
that.
of order was a motion not just made. A motion was submitted online.
A motion being submitted online does not make a motion, so I have to raise their hand and be recognized.
Need a second?
Is there a second to dispensing with this topic?
Second.
There's a second.
Objection.
There's objection. All right.
Is this Leisha?
I'm sorry. No, when we start.
Who's making the motion?
Hold on. Order.
Leisha.
Yeah, it is Leisha.
All right. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. We can go into debate. I've seen Ms. Wilfer here for a while with her hand up.
We have been kicking the can of dealing with this group down the road for 3 years now. 3 entire freaking years. The people moderating the group at various times have tried to get SLEC to do something about it. And if we kick this down the road again, I don't think we'll ever get to it. We need to make a decision today.
All right.
Request for information.
Yes.
Can you repeat what the exact motion is? There was chat.
The motion is to dispense with this topic so it can be discussed on the forums.
In other words, table it until the next meeting.
It's not really a table.
Well, one of the things that I see here is we're talking a lot about tactics, but there are some key strategic flaws. The first flaw is when you're marketing, you want to control the message. You cannot do that inherent in a Facebook group. We can't control messaging through our Facebook page, through YouTube, through blogs, through direct marketing, through all those areas. That is part of a marketing strategy, and there you drive engagement to get people out to the counties, you get them organized, you bring them into meetings. A Facebook group is not going to do that. I don't know how many of you love sports, right? I love sports. I played about every single one of them. I suck at all of them, but I get out there, I have fun. But no matter who you're rooting for, there's always one group of people that both teams hate. That's the referees. And that's what's happening to our moderators. That's what's happening to our moderators. We're putting them in a position that strategically they cannot survive. They're always going to have to make calls, and you're always going to make somebody upset, and that's going to reflect poorly on the Libertarian Party as long as it's considered an asset. So that's something that tactics aren't going to fix. It's a strategic flaw. One of the things I also do outside of one of the things I also do outside of my day job is I invest in real estate. This Facebook group, to me, is the money pit. You look at it, you see, oh, look at the potential. But all we're going to end up doing is throwing good resources after bad. How many years have we had this? How many moderators have we gone through? How much time could we have used to allocate toward putting out content that pull people in? So those are the things I would talk about. The tactics, the rules, that's short-term plus. We're going to lose overall strategic war. So that's what I would say.
The time has expired on this agenda item. So, unless there's a motion to extend, how long?
5 minutes.
Motion to extend for 5 minutes.
Clements.
Object. There was objection. Was there a second? Second. All right. Motion to extend for 5 minutes. Is there any amendments to that? Are you seeking to amend? Okay. Is that their amendment? Okay. We'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of extending for, was it 5 minutes?
Yes, sir, 5 minutes.
Raise your hand. All opposed? That does not reach 2/3. There's really no point of voting to dispense this item. It's done. So.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I guess there's no way I can say something at this point.
Does the body object to him saying one more thing?
Objection.
There's objection.
Well, there you
Okay.
That's why we have the motion to dispense. I read it out.
All right, at this point, we have 10 minutes for Whitney Billiard to give an LNC update.
I don't need all of that.
Cool.
Order.
Order.
I'm Whitney Billiard, for those of you who don't know me. This is my
1 second. Order. Thank you.
I am starting my second term now as the LNC representative for Texas and now 4 other states. So at this point, I don't have a whole lot to report from the convention itself. We're still waiting on some of the written reports and the minutes and things to be published, but I will be taking the highlights of those and putting them out on my Facebook group. That is, it's a group for, it's LNC Region 7. It's easy to find. And it is where I disseminate information to you guys. There are times when I ask for feedback if there are certain LNC votes coming up and things like that. So you'll want to get on there. It does not have all of the, I will delete comments. And I haven't had to block people yet. I will delete comments from there because I make it very clear up front what it's used for and how I intend for it to be used, and I set the expectations. So, and I have had 0 problems with it. Anyway, that's beside the point. We had an excellent convention, national convention a few weeks ago in New Orleans, and it was record-setting both in attendance, number of delegates present, except for Texas. And we intend to do the same thing again, well, even better in 2020 in Austin, right here. So hopefully every one of you and everybody else you know will. I don't think I have, oh, we did elect Nicholas Sarwark again as our chairman. Wasn't really that much of a surprise. We did have a surprise right before the the election with someone else deciding they were gonna, run, but it wound up being not a contest. Of course, everyone's favorite Barbara Bora is no longer. It did take 3 rounds to finally get him off, and then of course he promptly declared that he was running for president after that. So other than that, I don't really have anything specific to share. Like I said, there will be things specific to in the reports that I can put out on the Facebook group if you guys are interested. Yes.
I don't know if everyone knows about Oregon, but I think it's worth it's nice to know that Oregon got back
Yes,
together.
so those of you who are new to the party, you will not know this, but Oregon for a while was not really even recognized as an affiliated state party because there were 2 different groups within their party that claimed to be the original and the only legitimate Oregon state party. So with the help of Drew Leda, Karen Harlos, and a few other people, Oregon has reunited, and they actually joined Region 1, I believe. They're giving that another try. So yes, that is very cool. I think we also had South Carolina affiliate, and no longer is an orphan state, so that's kind of cool. However, one of our own states from our region, Mississippi, decided to withdraw from our region and go be an orphan state. So we'll see how that works for them. The vice chairman will now be the representative for any of the orphan states, if you will. Yes.
I know Oregon got back together, and I was thrilled to hear it. And there were 2 factions for a while, and there was some ruling from the Secretary of State on who held the ballot access. Were we able to determine which one was actually more libertarian? I wasn't sure.
I certainly won't comment on that.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you for your time. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited about what we're going to be doing here and at national, and of course at your local affiliates as well. So thank you so much.
I think up next we have a presentation by Marion Young for 15 minutes. And I'm going to get it up. She gave it to me earlier.
Yeah. How's everybody doing? I know it's late. I just want to talk a little bit about the importance of us developing a clear, concise vision and mission statement as our roadmap to a more efficient, effective organization. The things we're talking about would be solved if we had a clear vision and mission statement. It also would give us a combined unity of direction, which we sometimes seems like we're missing. Now, I'm new, but when I come in and see all of that goes on in the group, I think, wow, with all the talent here, if we were a little bit more unified, we really could blow them out the water. We have it. Now, as a result of our talk today, I hope you see some benefit where you want to take some action. That's what I'm trying to get to. Now, vision and mission statements are management and military concepts that have been employed by every successful organization. Now, how many here have been with an organization that has a mission statement? Right. Now, why do you think your company or the group took the time to do a mission statement?
Because some middle manager was trying to justify his job.
Have it for unification and goals, so everybody knows the direction that you are going. Research steadily shows that vision and mission statements are exceptionally important to any unified vision or any unified body, especially one like this that has so many different ideas.
Yeah.
If we could get a vague idea of what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go, we would be so much better off.
That's what I meant.
Point of order, I really like you right now.
Hey, hold up. Are you recognizing her? Is that fun?
Yeah, okay.
You have the floor here.
Okay, great. Ultimately, we want to make it easier for people to find us, our values, our ideas, and to come aboard with us. If we have that vision and mission statement, it can make it clear very quickly what we're about. Just to tell you a little bit about my background, I've been the last 25 years running and creating investment advisory firms where I've been responsible for successfully managing retirement monies for profit sharing plans, high net worth individuals, and small businesses. One factor in that success, especially coming through the financial crisis we just came through, was having that guidepost and strategy to keep people in there when times really got rough. When I first started in the industry, trying to get people to do investment policy statements, which is the same thing, where they sit down with the client and you put your strategy together, it helps you stay in there when times get tough. That's what a mission statement will do also. We're going to always have distractions coming at the organization. But if we have something to hold us in there and know what we're going for, then we know we can ride it through and all be on the same page. Okay? Now, basically I want to start and talk a little bit about what is the mission statement. You'll go to the next one. It defines the organization, what we want to do now. The vision statement, it talks as a minimum about the primary market we're serving, identify our products and service, and describe the geographical location. The vision statement is more aspirational. It should address what is the issue that our party addresses. Okay? Now let's look at some mission statements and see if they adhere to the market served, identify the product, and geographical location. The first one is building girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. What organization would you say has that mission statement? Yeah, very good. How about provide a global trading platform where practically anyone can trade practically anything?
Or eBay.
That is eBay. That is all right. Now, let's see if they follow the first one. Do they tell you the market served?
Everyone.
Right. Yep. Does it tell you what their product and service is?
Yes.
What's the geographical area? Okay, that's eBay. Now the last one, organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Right, right? Google, right. And again, what do you see in common with all of them, with their mission statement, which I'm going to spend more time on? But you know.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't our mission statement
Order.
liberty in our life?
Hey, you're not recognizing this body.
Okay, so basically, one of the first things, see how short they are? But it covers a lot in what they have to say. Less than 15 words. And still, you get the essence of who they are, who they're serving. And so if you go to their webpage and pull up the mission statement, you're going to recognize immediately what they do and where they stand, right? And you'll see on the next one, you are exactly right. Very easy for anyone to see. Now, if someone comes and starts looking for our mission and vision statement, just to get a clear idea of coming aboard with us, I believe, go ahead, Jeff. This is what they have to go through, right? Listen. Okay, so basically, we just want to make it clearer and easier for people to come aboard, to find us, and to accept our ideas, etc. Now, I want just you to think for 1 second about your last major purchase that you made, maybe with your spouse or anything could be, whatever, buy a car. But do you buy anything if it's not clear in what you're buying? So we want to make it as easy as possible for people to know who we are. If you are in the military, do you imagine they'll send a group out in the field, and I've never been in the military, without everybody knowing what's the common mission?
Sure, Vietnam.
Order. So anyway, this is a strategic frame of reference I borrowed from someone. So with the vision and mission statement, it makes it easier for us to get our goals. What are our top 5 we want to accomplish the next 6 months? What are the top 10 for the next year? Then it's easier to set our strategies. Then the tactics, who will play what role. The committee should support the mission. So as we get through different things, we'll know when we're off track because it doesn't pertain to our mission. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so as a result, we should have enhanced organizational effectiveness, a unified sense of direction, increased public awareness and understanding, easier messaging, fundraising. Is that me out? And, okay. Now
But he does want to say something.
I'm gonna wait till the end of the presentation. I'm just queuing up.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of have always, I just kind of live this stuff. It seems kind of, but to me, you have to have strategies. You have to have a way for us to move commonly in the same direction. There's a cause and effect with everything. If we want to get some change a year from now, be in a different place, we have to do something different now to get the result next year. So I'm hopeful if, people decide maybe this is something they want to do, we can get something working, get some people that know the organization, and can put together 10 sentences for us that talk about what we do.
All right.
Okay.
So here's my question, and I do appreciate you putting all this work together. I think it's a great deal of work, and I very much respect it. But your kind of premise, your original statement on this was that all successful organizations have a vision and a mission statement, and then you kind of went into that, how that should relate to our products. So my question is, are you aware of any other political parties, regardless of their success, who have a vision and a mission statement?
I did look them up, and everybody had one. I even found one from us from 10 years ago. So it's kind of out there, but I didn't put it in because based on what you sent me, that wasn't what we were using, right? So I didn't put it in, but I did find one for every political party too.
Thank you.
So I was a little unclear here. So I've got a couple of questions. First, were you intending this to be, or is your hope that we will develop a vision statement for the entire party or for SLEC specifically? Because the
Just
bylaws
SLEC.
that you pulled up.
Yeah, I'm just select.
And then following that, are you intending that this be publicized somewhere or some way? Because you talk about the product that we're selling, and it doesn't seem to me that SLEC is the product that we're selling, but rather the goals that we seek to achieve politically.
There you go.
Which seems more applicable to the party as a whole rather than to SLEC itself.
So I was kind of thinking in terms of, since we collectively are setting the goals for the party, correct, and responsible. So when I say us, I'm thinking in terms of what we develop and vote on and will be for the party, for Texas. Yeah. It'll be because if we're gonna set, and you'll let me know, but the way I'm kind of seeing it, right now you have so many people in here that know more about so much part of this. But collectively, we should be able to come up with something that'll make it easier for us. That's the whole point of just, and I know I don't know, all the backgrounds and things of that type, but people in here do.
I support moving forward to this. I think this organization has lots of talent, and the people on the board have lots of skills and information, and getting us to work together toward a common goal would be a wonderful thing. I'm thinking through how we're going to get there, and I think the way it's going to have to happen is we're going to have to create some sort of working group. It could be a committee, or it could just be a group of people that, under your leadership, gets together and brainstorms. We could brainstorm it on the forum, or we could brainstorm it offline with you guys, and then you guys bring it back to us. But I think that's the way we're going to go. I'm not going to make a motion.
No, I wasn't trying.
but
I was just trying to get it out there and
that's
see if the sense of it was that we would want to do something like this.
I just have a quick question. I appreciate the work that you did on this a lot. As a business owner, I do understand the need to have a defined, path that we're going. But did you read the preamble and our statement of principles? Because what you put was our SLEC stuff on there, but really it was in the vein of the SLEC decides at the state level, which at the state level we do. And our preamble at the state level ends with an actual sentence, which is our goal is freedom in our lifetime.
And I had.
And I'm just wondering, actually, can I read it to you? Tell me. It says our goal is a world set free in our lifetime, and it is to this end that we take these stands. So we did list our stands, and I'm just wondering, with the two, it sounds more like a combined and not just an SLEC focused thing.
What I'm trying to get to, and I'm just I'm a small business person. So mostly everything I do has a result goal in it. Everything has to be result oriented. So basically, I'm trying to see what we need to do to move if we get everything. I remember in the beginning part and trying to get people to sit down and do strategies, but once they do and we all start clicking together, it moves through faster. Now, it's probably some things in there that we can use, but we need to have 10 words, and when I say, I use product and service only because that's coming from the business world, knowing that we do have, a lot of times, I consider myself the product for my business, because they're buying me. So, in some sense, our ideas, concepts, and strategies, which we want the minimum government, we want the freedom and liberty, that's what we want to have our focus on. How is everything working towards that? But sometimes when we have that mission statement, and then every decision, like the Facebook, how does that relate to the state? Our mission. Our mission can give us that commonality. That's what I'm trying to get to. Now, the particulars of how it gets there, there are going to be a lot of things that people can contribute to get us there. But I'm just trying to give that, if that makes sense, that concept mainly. The details, you're going to be better at it, but it's the concept that I want to talk about a little bit today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I recognize Ms. Farmer, up next is motions on dates and locations for future meetings. Ms. Farmer.
I was going to move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion to adjourn, and it is in order. There's been a second. Is there objection?
Objection.
There's objection. All in favor of adjourning, raise your hand. All opposed? Motion fails.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and recognize you. I'm guessing you want to move. If I can get it back up. Where's the mouse? There it is.
Hey, here's the deal. I want to get out of here too, so if we just cooperate a little bit.
Here's why you know what
you really feel, John.
Hey,
Why don't you ask for something realistic?
here's the deal. If we can know a year in advance when and where we're meeting, and we can argue all day about moving the thing around, but this is pretty generalized. If we just cooperate a little bit, the way it works is whatever locale is the next one up, by the time of the meeting, before the time your locale is, the SDs work together a little bit and come on up with a place you're going to have them, like in San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas, which shouldn't be that hard. The next one up, the date October 6th,
got a place going on, talking a minute about the details of 26th of January in San Antonio, 4 May Dallas. I mean, you guys can read. And it's like these major groups just get together, so when we have this meeting, the San Antonio
Can you
people.
zoom in a little on those 4 points?
I can try.
Are you making this motion now?
I'm making this motion right now that we adopt this, and then we get the heck out.
Motion to amend.
Okay, before we go there,
Second the motion.
there's a second. I heard a motion to amend. Yes.
Brian Clark, motion to amend.
Brian Broussard is amending. What's your motion?
Motion is to delete the date of 6 October and substitute either, well, just substitute the date of 13 October.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to replace the 6th of October with the 13th of October. I did hear a second.
Okay.
Second.
Debate.
And yeah, he gets to speak to his amendment first.
Okay, we know we got that
Hold up,
place.
no, he gets to speak to his amendment first.
I was just informed by our county chair that we do have a county meeting the day that I just proposed, and so I would actually like to restate my amendment to 20 October.
Is there any objection from the body on that?
Yes.
Objection. Okay, the body has already adopted the new date, so we're gonna have to dispense with this first.
Wait, what? No. I have a motion to amend to the October date to the 20th of October instead of the 6th.
Okay, so let me make sure that I heard correctly. Y'all were objecting to him changing his motion. Yes, I'm seeing it. Yes. So there was objection. The body now owns that amendment. So
I'd like to make a motion to amend.
yes,
I'd like to make a motion to amend October 13th to October 20th.
that will work. All right, there's a second there. All right, do you want to speak to your information?
I do want to speak to it.
Hold up, point of information.
This actually falls back on the other one. What's the motion on the floor? Are dates and places set?
Yeah.
Is that a motion?
That's my motion.
So the main motion, I'm going to explain this. Hold up. The main motion is on the screen here. It lists 4 dates and locations, and there is a primary amendment to change the first date to the 13th, and there is an amendment to that amendment to change it to the 20th.
Now, further point of information. Back when we were talking about Facebook, there was no primary motion that was up on the screen.
No.
No, nobody moved that.
Nobody actually moved.
Yeah. All right. Miss,
That wasn't clear to a few people.
Can I
Miss,
speak to my amendment?
yes, you can, please.
So as a lot of you know, the Pride events across Texas are pretty big for a lot of campaigns.
Yes.
A lot of us in here in SLEC are involved in different campaigns. October 6th is the Fort Worth Pride. Tarrant County participates in this. We've even won the float award in Tarrant County there. It's a big deal for us to be there. So October 6th is a very bad day. And then October 13th, we have one of the top nuclear engineers in the entire world coming in and hosting a conference for us that day to talk about energy independence in Texas. That's a big deal to us. We put a lot of money into this, so I'm just asking you guys to please respect these plans that have been laid out for months and months in advance and change it to the 20th.
To piggyback a little bit on what Liz said, I wanted to know if anybody would object horribly to it being moved to November. I will be in the middle of campaigning in the home stretch. There's a lot of people that are going to be doing a lot of work. I do not want to neglect my responsibilities here, but that is one of the closing weekend, we're getting into closing time. So.
All right, we can't make a motion. We're 2 minutes deep at this point.
Point of information.
Point of information.
Is it possible for people who have conflicts to send, representative in their stead?
No,
That's not possible?
That's explicitly forbidden in our rules, yeah.
So I was going to kind of tag on to talk about how busy October is. It's just kind of a bad time that the Cowboys are playing the Texans. Jaguars after that, and then they're playing the Redskins. So I'm out for October.
That's on Sunday.
Motion to amend the amendment.
We are 2 amendments deep, so we cannot.
If the 2 amendments are withdrawn, can someone make a motion to amend to November?
So that's the fun part. They've been moved and seconded, and there has been object to withdrawal, so we cannot withdraw them. We must dismiss
Point of
them.
information. If we vote down these two amendments, we could then go to another amendment.
That is true. Ms. Villiam.
I just want to point out that October 6th is also the Observe Come and Take It Day, and that's actually a good day for candidates to actually do some out of the box campaigning. So we'll probably not be here.
Ms. Wilford.
Would it be germane at this time to speak against adopting any of these dates?
Sure.
So, my very first select meeting, I came in and I made a motion to set the next date for the select meeting. And so the first lesson I got to learn on select was that we don't have to do this. This is not a thing we, in my opinion, even should be doing. We can put these dates or maybe dates in October and November up and take a poll to see who's available on those, much like we did for this one. We can do that for January and May and July, and we can get a feel for people's actual availability, something that we're not all going to be able to check for all of these dates immediately right now. This proposal, or one similar to it, was made on the forum a while back, but then there were also lots of different changes happening in that thread, so that until this was actually posted to the forum yesterday, we didn't know what dates were going to be discussed. And even for a lot of that, not which locations we're going to go with which dates. So I would recommend to the body to reject the First Amendment and the Second Amendment and the main motion, and let's deal with this on the forum.
Mr. Turner.
I want to speak in favor of two setting dates. And the reason is, I don't know about the rest of you, but my calendar is not set out for 6-8 weeks in advance, like perhaps some of our meetings maybe. My calendar is set out for 6-8 months in advance. And if I have some dates, then I have some ability to change my schedule so that I'm not missing SLEC meetings. But if we're not deciding SLEC meetings until maybe only a month or two in advance, then people who have jobs and lives and other things to plan around just have a harder time making those meetings.
Eric, come on. I'm going to recognize the scripters point of information.
So this is a request for information.
Yes.
Because I don't know all the rules. But if we motioned to adjourn right now, could this be taken up on the forum?
Yes.
What about the motion?
Point of information back here.
If we were to adopt this as written or modifying point 1 to November or whatever, and then in mid-July we find out Harvey is heading for Houston, what would it take to reschedule that as far as in the forum, what would it require for us to change that date for whatever reason?
A motion, probably via forum, which means it would require a majority of the entire body. Eric.
I'd like to make a motion. I think it's in order. If I'm not, please let me know. We're too deep into amendments. We can't change it to November. It sounds like, feeling from the room, people would like November. Would it be in order to make a motion to call the question on the two amendments and go back to the main motion?
Yes.
That's what I want.
Is there a second? Is there objection? I'm hearing no objection. That's cool. Point of information.
Just calling the question on the amendments, not on the main.
On both amendments, yes.
I'd like to move to adjourn.
Second.
Hold up. Yeah. Motion to adjourn. I think motion to adjourn, yeah. I think you're right. Order. Okay, so we have a motion to adjourn. We're going to try this one more time, and then I'm going to start calling dilatory, all right? All in favor of adjourning, raise your hand. All opposed? That passes.
I don't know.
We've adjourned!
If you turn in your lanyard at the front of the room to Steve
I'm just
Or you could just get some people together and create a group of just get together and do it. I mean, you don't necessarily have to make I would just make a post on the board and say, oh, yeah. I mean, if you make the video, you just kind of have the steps to because you can bring promotion by yourself.
I'm not saying you because you know just the election my family still works. I'll work with you.
Yeah, we have a really well schedule, and that's usually a critical item. We have one on the board before also, that's an option, but it's a little messier.
Right. I just thought that, you touched on the points regarding